Alright, welcome to 2 pools 2 group stage, day number 2 in the second round. We're going to have the White Wolf Palace WWP versus SalzZ over here. Winchester and Classic Pro battling it out against Mr.Yo and Elix. Starting off with the Team Islands and the Coast to Mountain as the home maps for WWP, and the Forest Pond and Ridgeside Fortress for Winchester and Classic Pro. Before we dig ourselves very, very deep into the draft, please welcome on the stage, SalzZ.
The Russian and Ukrainian SalzZ team has a roster of 3 of the most improved players of the past year: Winchester, Dark, and Classic Pro. While Winchester has been one of the best in the world for a long time, his teammates have stepped up in recent months, making SalzZ a force to be reckoned with. The team had to go through the qualifiers and face the British duo of Hallis and Bling, a set they won convincingly. SalzZ is a team whose dynamic relies on Winchester. As the captain and best player on the roster, he has to be the driving force behind the trio. He also brings creative strategical thinking and his superb micro game to the table. If Dark and Classic Pro can support him well, the team becomes deadly. SalzZ will be playing in Group D, where there could be a Black Horse team. They're smart and skilled players, and the unusual drafting rules of 2 pools could play to their strengths.
So, after the introduction for SalzZ, let's take a look at the civilizations. We have a Saracen and Lithuanian ban. Interesting is the Saracen ban, I have to say, from WWP. Not something that's very, very conventional. They will open with Mongols, Franks, Mayans, Persians, Portuguese, alongside Burgundians, Turks, Burmese, Slavs being... This is interesting. SalzZ actually gave Slavs as a second pool civilization when Regicide Fortress is in the map pool. That feels like bad decision from SalzZ. Same thing for Teutons. They gave 2 insanely good civilizations for Forest Pond and Ridgeside Fortress potentially. Others and Sicilians, Byzantines, Incas, Japanese and Vietnamese will be the second pool. Cumans, Indians, Italians, Malay and Chinese will be the first pool for SalzZ. This is a winner's match, which means that the winner of this set will be automatically in the quarterfinals and the loser will have to play a decider game. Previous round, Mr.Yo and Lix actually won fairly convincing against I believe... who did they win against? They won against the Italians. So, vodka and rice. And then SalzZ actually won by a narrow margin versus Doubt and Salam. So, that was a very, very close set. And it is very possible we would see a rematch of that in the decider game if SalzZ loses this time. WWP should be the clear favorite, but this could be a very, very interesting and intriguing matchup overall. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how these 2 teams should perform. Mr. and Lix could be the clear favorites for a tournament even, although SalzZ, you should never underestimate SalzZ, as this team is very, very young, very, very ambitious, and they have a lot of good things going for them if they play their maximum, though. They have to play the cleanest of their own games. With that being said, it is time to jump into game number 1. Winchester and Classic Pro will be playing as yellow and red on the left side. We do have a bit of a freeze here in Capture Age. Don't worry, it's fine. Capture Age totally crashed. Well, it happens. It happens. Well, that actually is going to be a restart for us over here. I apologize, but sometimes things like that happen. So, SalzZ versus a White Wolf, a Palace over here, attempt number 2. So, here's the deal. SalzZ will be playing with Vietnamese in yellow on the left, and Winchester will be playing Chinese as red. This is the reason why I believe that the Chinese civilization is potentially the best civ to go for, like, as an early pick, so to say, in your draft because Chinese is an excellent archer civ, but it's also very, very good cavalry civ. Has a great economy, very, very good until you have to play with paladins, obviously, because they're missing paladins. But up until like mid to late Imperial, Chinese is a top tier cavalry civ, and that is extremely important. And that versatility is something that very, very few civilizations have. So Chinese and Vietnamese is actually a very, very nice combination of civilizations over here. Could be something that can be used for laming purposes as well, with the Vietnamese knowing where the opponents are. So you could try to go for a lame, but it appears that SalzZ will not go for that. Other side, Lix will be playing Slavs. That's a little bit interesting, because usually Yo is the cavalry player. Lix will be playing Slavs in green, and to the north of him it's going to be Mayans for Mr.Yo in blue. So this should be a setup where the Chinese team will probably start to play very, very standard, and I would be massively doubtful about the fact if Lix goes for any kind of like super, super aggression gameplay over here. So with that, let's take a look at Lix's base over here. Oops. Sorry for that. It looks like there's a little bit of a bottom bar at the beginning, or at the bottom. We are a little bit sloppy with that, but it's fixed. So, with that, I apologize for the little difficulties here. What's more important is Classic Pro coming forward with his scout, potentially denying a deer push from Lix. Lix already pushed in 2 ostriches for himself. Second boar just now coming in for him. And on the other side, it looks like we have some aggression coming in for Mr.Yo. So we have an Archer Civ versus Scout Civ matchup on the south, and same thing on the north as well. It's going to be interesting to see how Vietnamese will be able to play against Mayans, because technically Mayans should be the superior civ throughout the game. Obviously Rattan Archers is tough for Mayans to deal with, but Rattan Archers is long time away. So really, at this point, I think that I actually favor Mayans a little bit. They have cleaner tech switches, cleaner transitions over here, but it might not even go down to the Vietnamese versus Mayan matchup overall, because they're so far away from each other. It probably will more or less be focused on coordinating their armies instead, because you have an Archer Civ versus Cavalry Civ gameplay over here. So Classic Pro is going for an early loom here, playing safe in this one. It's worth pointing out that SalzZ, when they played the qualifiers, they actually had trouble losing villagers early on Arabia to the aggression, for example, from Hellis and Beling. So this is something that is a nice precaution, I would say. And it looks like Classic Pro is playing standard-ish 21 pop archers. It's a little bit faster than normal, but with Vietnamese, you can afford it. And especially because of lack of wood cost on your eco upgrades, you might even be able to squeeze in Horse Color, which is a massive boost to Vietnamese and a very, very underrated boost. Other side, we also have Chinese for Winchester. The Chinese team bonus for farms also helps immensely here. One of the reasons why it's always nice to have Chinese in your team. And it is very, very late. Actually, no, it's not late. It's Chinese. I was looking at the villager count and saying, wait, 23 pop scouts, but that's not the case. That should be about 20 pop timing for Winchester with Chinese. We will have Lix with 20 pop scouts for him, and it looks like Yo is going to open man-at-arms. With such a gold mine, I can justify that, although I don't think that's absolutely necessary. So you can fairly easily wall off your northern side for the time being. The gold mine is not that super exposed. I like that Yo, even now, he's pushing in some extra deer. It's not like he has to, but if there is nothing else that you can do with your scout, or you want to do anything else with your scout, then it's definitely worth pushing in some deer, because such an effort can boost your eco quite heavily. I love how Winchester is tracking down the militias, or soon-to-be men-at-arms, heading his way. He is walling himself up, and the men-at-arms opening against an archer civilization is definitely a reasonable thing to do. So I am actually a fan of that decision. so to say, from Winchester and Mr.Yo. So, with that, we're gonna have the men-at-arms struggling to find a way into the base of Winchester for the time being. But there's still a big opening on the left side, so that could be a little bit troublesome. And I think a men-at-arms opening against the Scouts player is always great, because the Scouts kind of struggle cleaning up men-at-arms. It's a fairly expensive thing, and it's always good when you can trade men-at-arms to Scouts, and this will force Winchester to evacuate his base. The Eagle is coming in here as well. And your teammate, the Archer player, is actually very, very far away from helping. That being said, if you have a Spearman plus Archer composition on the other side going towards Lix, that could be dangerous for Lix, but here's the deal, it looks like Winchester will be double teamed, and the thing is that Classic Pro will try to launch a counterattack, but Lix will be fully volt, so Classic Pro won't be able to do much, whereas on the other side, Winchester is definitely far from being volt, so this seems like it could be a very, very good damage done by White Wolf. Palace over here, men-at-arms already taking the shot, trying to snipe down the Spearman so that it's not able to take some shots against the Scouts of Lix over here. Lix still loses the Scout over there, and that's a very, very nice defense overall. That's a beautiful defense, actually, from Winchester. Didn't lose a single villager. Will clean up the men-at-arms. I think given the circumstances, Winchester's defense here has been absolutely top-notch. So that was a beautiful defense here for him. He still needs to finish his Vols, especially because he will need that gold mine later on. But other than that, I think he's all good, as Classic Pro is trying to get through the Vols of Lix for now. Equal numbers are fairly even, I would say. What I would like to highlight, though, is that I think that there had to be a lot of idle time on the TC of Winch. Indeed, 54 seconds is a little bit more than what you actually want to have with Chinese. Still, it's worth pointing out that they have the Chinese team bonus, so the Archer player actually has a much more reasonable farming eco. And it looks like Classic Pro is very, very heavy on archers as well, double range archers. Here's the deal. The men-at-arms is nice and they killed quite a lot of scouts. But if you do men-at-arms, you delay your archers. You see that Yo is right now at 5 archers, and his opponent, Classic Pro, is at 9. And those archers also have more HP because they're Vietnamese archers, and archer numbers could be an extremely important factor. So we will see if this men-at-arms opening is worth it for Mr.Yo, because at the end of the day, if you think about it, he falls behind in archer numbers, and that could be very troublesome. Lix rolling behind right now to slow down this aggression, but here come the scouts, and this is getting more and more worrisome for our WWP team. It looks like once again Winchester will be doubled here by archers. I like this Spearman here because that helps quite a bit at making sure Winchester is not able to clean this up easily. But the Vols are up, so Winchester will have the time to react to this one. He can add the second layer of Vols very, very easily to this one. Nice quick wall so far from Lix. There might be a hole here, but I think this is sort of decent aggression from SalzZ, forcing a defensive tower from Lix. As I mentioned, there is a lot of buffer space here for Winchester. He's doing the right thing, walling behind. He's got to be careful, though, especially with indeed, this is a hole. There is a hole still there, and that could be a disaster for Winch. Small details like that could decide the game, or just the scouts running past the TC here. Winchester, what are you doing, man? What are you doing? That's a disaster for Winch. That is exactly what he should have avoided, and this is the difference between Winch and Lix right now. Lix had a much better defense in early feudal age. Like, he was able to wall behind, Winchester wasn't, and Winchester is going to pay the price really, really badly here. Now Winch is down by 3 villagers. There's going to be some archers helping to clean this one up. Winch will probably lose a 4th one over here as well. Unless they can do damage on Lix, this could be troublesome, but Lix is also losing some vills, so this might not be that bad after all. I mean, it's definitely not ideal for Winchester, but you will probably clean up a couple of archers here from Yo, which is worth mentioning, and right now, Lix is losing a lot of vills as well, so sure, Winchester lost 3, but Lix also lost 3. Winchester is now down by 4. Classic Pro killed 3 villagers, lost 0, so at the end of the day, if you think about that, you have 4 villagers lost from SalzZ's team, and they killed 3. That's fairly even if you consider the fact that Chinese would have extra villagers, and most importantly, they clean up Yo's army. Which means that Yo is down to 10 archers as opposed to 21, and preserving archer numbers is extremely important in 2v2s. So, believe it or not, I think this actually went better for SalzZ. Because, at the end of the day, if you take a look at Classic Pro's resources, he's getting close to clicking up to Castle Age. Yo will click up first, I believe, but he's gonna be at 12 archers as opposed to about 23 archers from the Vietnamese player. No +1 defense for him, neither is for Mr.Yo. But SalzZ has to be careful now not to get their archers intercepted here, because if they get cleaned up, then the fights are definitely even. There is +1 defense in for Lix, which means that he can take a very good fight here, and boy oh boy, I think the problems will escalate now for SalzZ, because this is not a fight that they want to take. They want to, like, the best case scenario right now for Classic Pro is to trade off his archers to the opponent's archers, but this is just as bad as it was for Yo that he lost all his army inside the base of the opponent. So now Classic Pro is going to be down by quite a lot of archers. He's doing the right thing, he's trying to snipe down as many archers as he can, but this is not something that should have happened, and now the archer numbers are fairly even. Castle Age times, as I said, slightly better for Mr.Yo, but our Chinese player Winchester is gonna go for a triple stable play for now. So very, very aggressive play from Winch, who is getting close to clicking up to Castle Age, floating a lot of gold. In the meanwhile, we have Lix, who is getting close to clicking up, but his gold mine was severely delayed, and this could be an important factor, because Lix was forced to make a defensive tower here, which means he won't be able to easily go for additional TCs. He will mine stone, but it's not going to be free TCs anytime soon. And more important, the gold mine being delayed will mean that Lix is beaten to Castle Age by Winchester by all possible solutions, right? Like, Winch is going to click up right now. Actually, Lix is finding his way up, probably because Winchester's eco was very unbalanced. Winch has 10 villagers on gold, with 600 gold in the bank, no market to buy himself up. Still, Lix is going to be quite far away. Yo is grabbing crossbow, and this is going to be an interesting fight once again. Winchester will be pushed by crossbows from Yo, and same thing is going to be there for Lix. The difference is that Lix has a bit more time to react. He sees the archers, and those will be crossbows just now. Winchester will also see the crossbows heading his way. These walls are nicely reinforced. There is some weak parts on the left side, but honestly, Winchester's walls are actually pretty strong, whereas Lix's walls aren't. And if you haven't revealed those crossbows a little earlier, then this would have been much more devastating. As I said, that small amount of time that Lix was given to react to this allowed him to rush up a market. He's forced to go for another defensive tower though, and that means he is forced to play 1 TC, and that's extremely important. Because if you're forced to play 1 TC, then the triple stable play from the Chinese player can work out very, very well. Another 2 villagers go down from Lix, make it free. They are heading towards Classic Pro now, but Classic Pro can just take this hill and defend. Classic Pro needs to react, loses 1 villager, loses 2. Yo already is coming in with ballistics. 3 villagers down for Classic Pro as the defensive tower goes up, but Lix is down to 39 villagers, the lowest in the game. And that could hurt because the knight numbers could be very troublesome. Classic Pro's wood lines will actually go denied. Disaster. Disaster, man. A potentially game-losing move here for Classic Pro, having an overchop on that woodline. It's insanely hard to spot, I have to admit. Luckily for him, he's got quite a lot of crossbows back at home. Like, that's the only hope that he has. He's going to lose villagers, that's not a question. But at least he's got crossbows back at home to stop this, so he'll probably not lose more than 5, let's say. But still, they overall killed 9 villagers and lost 12, so... Oh, what is Vinch doing? He's sending all his villagers in there, he's fighting as +1/+1 bloodline scouts. That's a massive misjudgment of the situation. He shouldn't have fought this. Still, if they can break into Lix's base, that could be something to consider. But it's actually triple stable knights from Lix. Lix has +1/+2. Winchester only has +2 defense, no attack upgrades for now. Still, the crossbows will be traded off here, but at the end of the day, it's a 7 villagers lead for WWP now. Yo will be on 3 TCs, whereas Classic Pro is just sitting on 1. And I feel like, even though SalzZ is not completely dead, the overall outcome of these fights resulted in a slightly better situation for WWP. Now the knights are jumping on top of those crossbows. This is the exact same thing that Winchester has to do, jump on the crossbows of the blue player over here. Ballistics is in for both players, no tumbling just yet, +2 defense coming in for our yellow player. I like this crossbow though, harassing Lix's wood line, and Lix will have trouble accessing wood. And that would mean that he will have trouble reseeding farms, which could be problematic in the long run. Still, once again, Lix is absorbing a lot of damage, and it is Mr.Yo, who's booming on 3 TC, is going for range number 3, and that could be a massive difference maker in between the two teams, because right now SalzZ is going to fall behind in eco quite heavily, so SalzZ has to play some very aggressively. Once again, the target is Lix, interestingly. I would have thought that you focus a little bit more at trying to push Yo, because Lix has already taken some damage, but it's interesting that they want to finish off Lix here. That's probably the plan. They're trying to get through the stone gate over here, pick off one villager that was building it, but a big horde of crossbows from Yo is heading towards Winchester. I'm not even sure if that TC goes up. Winch is now on 2 TCs. It's worth pointing out that the cavalry player in general is more important than the archer player is. So, from that perspective, if Winchester is able to keep a good eco, then it is definitely beneficial for SalzZ. Like, it's better that Winchester has the better eco and not Classic Pro. So, I prefer SalzZ's position from that perspective, that their cavalry player has a better eco and not the archer player. Now, Winchester is massively underreacting this one, and the knights will just run into his base. What is happening to Winch? He's trying to take down stables from Lix, but he just allowed all those knights and crossbows inside his base, and the knights will just run past the TC, hitting the wood line. What happened here to Winch? He just completely ignored the fact that his stable was being beaten down over there. Villager count still very, very close. It's worth pointing out that Lix is under heavy pressure though. So Lix lost his gold mine, he loses his stables, and while Winchester is indeed under heavy pressure and Winchester will lose something, I feel like at the end of the day Lix lost more than Winchester did. Winch is now 8 villagers deficit, but if you take a look at Classic Pro, 17 to 10 villager kills. So at the end of the day, I think Classic Pro and Winch are doing more damage on Lix than Yo and Lix are doing on Winchester's base. Now the crossbows will come from the back trying to intercept this army. I think the surround is slightly better for WWP, although this is basically all of Yo's army, or at least half of them, and this will be a big cleanup. Imperial Age coming in for Yo, that's a super early Imperial, but he's going to lose all his crossbows. Can Mayan snowball a game? It's 79 villagers, but most importantly, Yo has 13 crossbows. That is a crazy situation, because Yo is gonna have the technology advantage, but will he have the numbers advantage? That's the problem. Because Lix right now is like half dead. So he is just losing all the knights over here. He's got nowhere to go. He's 1 TC. He will lose a couple of villagers inside this TC as well. Yo could technically snowball the game with Arbs, but he's gonna have to do it with 82 villagers. Mayan's 82 villagers is pretty decent, but can he actually take a 2 versus 1? I'm not so sure, and Lix cannot sling. You can only sling in Imperial Age, which means that the best thing Lix can do is like try to make knights. Thank you so much for the raid, Viper as well, and I appreciate that from Zupi, from previously as well. We're casting SalzZ versus WWP in 2 polls, 2. Hopefully we had a fun time with AoE 4 release, or AoE 4 videos. So for now, Lix seems dead, but this is just the traditional setup of the WWP team. Lix dies and Yo just booms. And Yo is gonna have about 30 ARBs in a moment, and neither of the SalzZ players are close to Imperial. This would be a disaster for Yo though. That's not something that he can afford. Losing the crossbows before imp upgrades come in would be a disaster for him. So, I mean, Lix is so that he's at 37 villagers right now. Half of his eco is idle. He's got 15 idols, and I feel like indeed Winchester is doing the right thing. He can just run around and raid the eco of Yo, because Yo is going to lack mobility, and the best way that you can actually make Yo suffer is by running around and trying to do as much damage to his eco, so he can't just send all the ARPs forward. Yo with a ballsy castle drop over here as Winch is getting close to imping himself. That castle should have no trouble going up, but really what Winchester has to do is use the mobility advantage that he has. Nice siege workshop wall over here from Mr.Yo. So that castle goes up, but does that mean that much for Winch? It probably does something, but not an awful lot, and Winch should be able to get to him. If he gets to Imperial Age, then he's gonna have Cavalier and he should be able to win against Yo. One villager will get picked off, but the rest of them will live to see another day. WWP should be the favorites indeed, but I wouldn't count out SalzZ. SalzZ actually defeated Doubt and Slam in a very close set. I would say I'm going 70-30 for WWP, but it looks like game number 1 is slowly going in the hands of our Russian team, because overall eco is better for SalzZ, and Imp will be coming in for Classic Pro as well. So it's going to be Cavalier and Orbs from the Vietnamese player, obviously. Potentially even Rattans as we progress deeper into the game, whereas Lix is nowhere close to contributing anything. Now, here's the tricky thing, if that trap takes down that TC, then Imp could be stopped from Winchester. He's gonna have some raiding units at the back of Yo's base though, as we will have most of the knights here from Winchester cleaned up. It is 40 ARBs, but once Classic Pro reaches Imperial, he's gonna have 45 ARBs himself, and those are actually better ARBs because they are Vietnamese ARBs. Now, Winchester is starting to lose quite a lot over here, and his situation is getting heated up. Yo's gonna have to do some massive carrying in this case, and he takes down 2 TCs. Very unlucky for him that he's not targeting the only town center that Imp is coming in on. If he actually targeted this, he would have been able to stop Imp, because the ARBs would have just picked off the repair villagers. Winch will be lucky enough to squeeze in Imp just in time. Like, if he clicks up 20 seconds later, he might not have gotten to Imperial, but this is what matters for him. He's gonna be at only 10 knights, but he's got, I think, enough. Not really enough, to be honest. He doesn't really have the eco to get the numbers out. He's squeezing in plate barding and Cavalier, but they won't actually have the eco to pump out a lot of those Cavalier in this one. So I think it really starts to fall into the hands of Classic Pro to make sure that he can finish off the game here with the Arbalest, because he's gonna have equal amounts of ARBs compared to Mr.Yo. Defensive guard tower coming in here for Classic Pro. He went for guard tower tech. A rare sighting of the Vietnamese guard tower. And we should consider Lix is gonna imp. Lix is gonna imp here. And you could ask, why is Lix imping with 46 villagers? But the answer is simple. You can sling when you get into Imperial, and SalzZ is slowly losing ground. Eco-wise, WWP is now ahead, although Classic Pro is just waiting for the opportunity to hit Yo's base, but Classic Pro's eco is very fragile, 60 villagers compared to 103 from the opponent, and honestly, Lix is booming back into this one. Don't underestimate the power of Slavs. Still, we now have about 14-15 Cavalier, and more importantly, there is going to be 46 ARBs, and that's the problem for WWP. SalzZ, the situation was looking grim for them for some time, but now they can actually start cleaning things up here with the Cavalier. With the ARBs hitting Yo's base, and they can just keep raiding Lix. It's not an amazing situation for SalzZ by any means, but it is not as bad as it looks like for them. Yo's got a crazy army, 63 ARBs, but that's all that they have, basically. So, if that goes down, then it's pretty much over, and if you look at the other side, there is 45 Vietnamese ARBs as well, and Yo's eco will just get torn apart here. There is a nice counterattack here from Mr.Yo, but smaller groups of ARBs could now be intercepted by Cavalier, and it looks like the counterattack is on. Winchester lost a lot of space, but if there is one team that is capable of, surviving all this ground lost, that's SalzZ. SalzZ is just so good when it comes to this scorched earth tactics, and things like this may not be very useful for Mr.Yo. Losing 17 ARBs to... well, he will probably lose all of those to the Cavalier and the ARBs here. Another castle comes in here from Yo. Yo is at 71 ARBs, man. Imagine if they had Obsidian Arrows. This has to be Yo full carry, by the way, to have any shot at this. But this might be happening, because Classic Pro's ARB numbers aren't impressing. In fact, fully upgraded ARBs for Yo, and +4 defense missing for our yellow player hurts so badly. SalzZ is at 15 military. SalzZ is dead. Oh my goodness, this escalated quickly, man. Yo is just an absolute beast. I'm not going to try and over-exaggerate things, but he 1v2'd this one. And that is why WWP is just so strong as a team, that if you don't hit Mr.Yo, they will finish the game off against you, no matter what. And really, Lix was so dead, he was like 30 villagers at 30 minutes. But man, Yo's boom was just crazy, and the way that Yo pushed, and imagine if he actually attacked that TC like 20 seconds earlier. If he does that, they can just stop Imperial Age from Winch. I think the key part was that Winch just lost his base here in 5 seconds, and suddenly he didn't have the farming eco. Losing 30 farms like that means that he can't actually produce Cavalier. If he had like 25, 30 Cavalier on the field, he would have been able to clean this one up. But with that, SalzZ loses game number 1. They had their shot, but at the end, Yo and Lix just playing absolute craziness, especially Yo. In fact, Yo actually slung quite a lot of resources to Lix because he was an Imperial. That's probably the reason why Lix could click up as well. But, oh man. Think about it this way, though. Yo and Lix is in this tournament. There is Viper Taro, there is Heraldiri, there is Suomi. There's so many good teams in this tournament. This is gonna be crazy as an outcome. With that, number 1 game is gone, and we're going to one of the home maps for SalzZ, which is either Forest Pond or Regicide Fortress. So, if it's Regicide Fortress, I would think that Teutons will be used there by WWP alongside maybe Mongols. That seems like a reasonable composition. And other side, I think it's gonna be Cumans. SalzZ loves their Cumans on Regicide Fortress. And maybe Sicilians or Byzantines could be a very strong civilization for Regicide Fortress. If it's Forest Pond, it could also be Byzantines for the Fire Galleys alongside maybe something like Malay, because you probably want Italians on Team Islands. So, for now, we will jump into game number 2, which will be, as I said, on the home map of SalzZ. We're going to Forest Pond first, and we'll have an Incas Malay versus Persian Turks matchup. Interesting. Definitely very, very interesting. So, let's jump into game number 2 over here. We will have WWP on the southern part of the map, Lix playing Turks in red, not a civ that you commonly see on this map. Other side, we will have Persians for Mr.Yo in blue. To the north, we will have the SalzZ in red and yellow. Winchester will be playing Incas, and we will have Classic Pro as Malay. So Classic Pro will probably be fighting water, and the Inca player, there is always that mind game element of Incas. Because everybody would say, hey, Incas will just Veil Rush. But what if you just play Standard with Incas? It is very possible that you could play Standard, and this, I think, when you're up against Incas, it forces the opponent to think about going to Feudal fast, because if you get Veil Rushed here, you could be in real trouble. Now, it looks like Winchester is up against Yo here, which I think is the better matchup for SalzZ. The two better players of the teams, because Winchester is the better player of SalzZ, and Yo is the better player probably of WWP. So the two better players are on the same side, which means that technically, if Winchester indeed goes for like an aggressive tower push type of a thing, then he could potentially take Yo out of the game and then have Classic Pro try to win against Lix. But the problem here is that if you go for like a tower rush or villager rush, how are you going to, you know, prevent issues like, you know, per se, Yo defending against that? Because, as I said, the biggest thing is that Yo is just so good when it comes to towering and defensive towering as well. So, if you are good at attacking with towers, you're usually good with defensive towers as well, because you have a very, very nice perception, knowing where you have to place your towers. So, we will have Deer being pushed in by Yo. He's 4 on wood for now. No dock just yet for him, though. We will have no dock either from Lix, interestingly. Or at least not until now. First dock just now coming in for Winchester. He weakens the board with the TC and then takes it down. Has a little bit of a struggle pushing in Deer. He already managed to push in one, but that was all of it. And apparently, the Deer seem to be a little bit, well, refusing to cooperate or so. So, we will have a dog coming in now from Mr.Yo. He's 5 on wood, so that's a standard hybrid build for him. He's the Persian player, so you would expect the Persian player to be fighting war, and this is why this could be interesting. Winchester, if he knows that he's up against the Persian player, he could take out the water player of the opponent fairly easily, although it depends on what Lix is doing. So far, Lix hasn't added a dock, and that is more than interesting. Is Lix trying to just go for a complete fast castle here with castle drop? Because Turks could be good for that. We talked about this one with Hellis when we casted yesterday, that so far the best strategy for this map seems like having one good water player fight on water and the other player castle dropping the opponent. So if you're a Classic Pro, you gotta be prepared for a potential castle drop from Turks. It's not as good as Conquistadors or Rambai, but a castle drop Janissary play could be very possible, but it cannot be a coincidence that Lix is not going for water. Lix is going for something that is entirely land-based. He's 4 on wood, so this is not a scout's play. This seems like just a vanilla fast castle, potentially into Janissaries, although he would need to start making farms soon. He even went for the mill, which is also an indication of the fact that he would just go full land-focused. So this is something that could be concerning for SalzZ. We will have Winchester with fishing ships out here. This is a beautiful dock for Vinch, by the way. The deep fish right next to the dock here, and you also got the villager on the shore fish. This deep fish is actually very, very good for this dock. So it looks like first to Feudal Age will be Classic Pro, harnessing the melee advantage here. One of the reasons why I love melee for this map. And he's probably going to beat Yo into Feudal Age by a massive margin, although Yo is going to have the Persian docks that work faster, so he can catch up in Fire Galley numbers. But still, Classic Pro will have a chance to finish off the fishing geek of Mr.Yo before Yo would actually be able to field any units. And it looks like Vinch is going. Vinch is going, and that's the game plan. So what they're trying to do, as Yo is looking for those villagers, Yo will find them. Yo knows exactly the villas are coming. These villas, by the way, don't have loom. They don't have loom. This is a super fast feudal from Winchester. I'm not sure if this is intentional or not, but it seems like it could be intentional. Skipping loom, sneaking the villager forward. I guess the idea is that you want to take out the opponent's water player so that Classic Pro is able to win water easily. Still, as I said, Lix apparently is going for a fast castle into Janissaries type of a play. He is going to open up the gate for his opponent and he loses some HP on his scout. This matters a lot because Classic Pro is going to deny the final deer, which is extremely important in this situation. Still no loom for Winchester. I love the reaction from Yo. He immediately sends villagers on stone. And it looks like it's actually going to be a fort with archer range. And this could explain why WWP banned Saracens. Maybe they expected such a move from the opponent, as that's a bad fight for Vinch. That's a bad fight for Vinch, he loses his eagle. So maybe they expected this aggression, and this would be much better with Saracens, like the archer forward. I really love that, as I said, that Yo is mining stones, so he can make a defensive tower immediately. But if he loses control over this part of his base, he will lose his stone and he will lose his gold. Yo will immediately go for a counter tower. In this case, he will try to delay the villagers, but that won't happen. Other side though, look at Yo. I mean, Yo is playing out of his mind, man. He is fighting on water, scouting the opponent. He's going for a defensive tower as well. Yo is doing so many things at the same time that is just absolutely crazy. But I think the real factor, or the real X factor, so to say, here is gonna be Lix with the castle drop, because there's gonna be no answer from Classic Pro to that. Like, the best thing Classic Pro can do is like stonewall himself off on the right side. But that's basically your only shot at this one. Once again, look at Yo. He's bringing a villager take down the tower from the inside. Our archer is the response from Winchester, and Yo is just so good when it comes to like this counter towers and tower defense type of play. He's just an absolutely amazing player when it comes to that. Now, one thing that's positive for Vinch is that he can actually garrison archers inside those towers, which means that he can keep repairing the tower or drop a second tower over here, potentially outside the vision of Yo. No, Yo sees that tower, so Yo will be able to react. Demo comes in here, and while Yo is distracted, he will take some big demo hits on the water, and I guess the plan, or at least this part of the plan, is working for SalzZ. Yo is distracted, and that means that currently SalzZ has a massive eco lead from the fishing, 66 to 54 eco. But here's the deal, Lix is coming forward with the villagers and he will drop the castle in the face of Classic Pro. Luckily for Classic Pro, he's melee, so he can react to this one very fast. The problem is that, wait, Yo does have Loom, but he's still losing those Voyagers really, really fast. Now archers come in and camp beneath the tower. Look at that house from Vinch. And looks like now Yo is in trouble. Yo won't be able to counter tower more. He's out of stone. He doesn't have a market. And another tower here from Winchester would cut him off from gold. And while the castle drop will happen, it's a tower first from Lix. It's probably just to solidify the position. I like the second layer walls from Classic Pro buying himself some time. It appears that Yo won't be able to stop those archers from running past the walls. So Yo is out of gold. He will make a couple of fire galleys, but now I think Classic Pro needs to go into Castle Age. Like, I would dare to say that Classic Pro overinvested into water. 8 fire galleys feels a little too excessive. Especially now that he's gonna get castle drop, because that's the plan for Lix. Luckily, as I said, for Classic Pro, he's melee, so he can reach the next stage much faster than others. So he can react to a castle age from Lix very, very easily. And what he needs to do is potentially monks against the Janissaries, but it's all about just not dying for him, because Yo is pretty much dead. Yo is gonna have nowhere to go. Yo's got absolutely nowhere to go, man. He's fighting with Voyagers already, and I mean, the market is denied, the docks are denied. Yo actually lands a big demo shot over here, something that's worth rewinding. Beautiful demo shots for Mr.Yo on the water. And that is going to be nice. He actually deleted those demos, but still, those were some nice hits over there. Still, at this point, Yo's got no gold income. Yo is trying to rush up a market, but that's not happening either. And without a market, he can't buy stone. He can't buy anything. So now the market is up, but this is the moment where Yo is gonna get trapped. Like, Yo is trapped within his own base, and he's got nowhere to go. He's trying to get a couple of skirms out, but the archers will just run past. Yo will die here. And I think at this point, Classic Pro just needs to do exactly what he's doing. Stonewall, Stonewall, Stonewall. Try to go up to Castle Age and make your own defensive castle. And that's exactly what Classic Pro is doing. Classic Pro is playing this one really smart, I have to admit. So he knows exactly that, okay, I will need to get a defensive castle up against this aggression. A tower coming in here from Mr.Yo so that he at least has some resource income. Many of those Voyagers are weak. Yo actually keeps a bunch of Voyagers garrisoned inside his TC to prevent the archers from running past. Another tower could actually come in here from Vinch, or he could just hit the back of the gold mine. Like, Yo's eco is pretty much non-existent, even though Yo actually wins water. For now, Rams coming in right now as Classic Pro. As I said, the melee being available here means that he's reaching Castle Age really fast, but he might have trouble answering to those Janissaries and those Rams because the walls are going down really fast, and it's still just 200 stone in the bank for our yellow player. What a crazy game on water. Still, you gotta be careful if you're Classic Pro and Vinch. I mean, it would be a disaster if Yo, like a half-dead Yo would win water. It would be a massive Yo carry, by the way. But it would be a disaster for souls if you actually won water after taking so much damage on land. Like, Yo's not supposed to have any sort of eco in this game. Defensive guard towers can also work out. Like, Mangonel guard tower can also be a thing here for Classic Pro. Rushes up a university, so indeed it's guard tower defense for him. Winchester has a lot of arena experience, and such a castle drop plays very, very arena-esque, so I can imagine Winchester saying or telling him what exactly to do to make sure that he doesn't die to this, because all they have to make sure is that Classic Pro doesn't die. And then they'll have the fishing advantage. A consistent 20 Villagers lead is a massive, massive advantage. Added to the fact that Mr.Yo is dead and Winchester is actually mining stone like a madman. Do you know what this means? A castle from Vinch in the face of Yo. It's gonna be a castle somewhere around over here. And Yo will have nowhere to go. Guard Tower is in for a Classic Pro as Lix will find a different angle to attack from. Guard Towers will actually hold very nicely against Mangonels, but they have to go up first. Janissaries are actually very good at picking off Voyagers from a distance because they do have 8 range. But really, the problem is that Lix is at 32 eco, by the way. So Lix's build is kind of an all-in build here. Transport ship from Yo. Yo wants to transport his Voyagers outside now. He knows exactly that he has nothing going for him here. I would love to see Classic Pro going for the War Galley upgrade, though, because I have to say that SalzZ's water play is very underwhelming here. How is Yo able to win water? That's unthinkable for me. How is that even possible? And I think the biggest problem with that is that that means that Yo can escape. Look at this, Yo is able to make fishing ships, and now Yo will try to launch mass migration. If SalzZ would have had a better water presence, maybe not lose that many ships to demos or so, they would have prevented this escape and Yo would be dead. So, like now Yo is going to start escorting Vultures to the outside. The problem for Yo will be that he will lose his TC and he won't be up to Castle Age, so he will have to wait until he loses his TC or delete it himself to be able to replace his town center, and right now it's just leaving the sinking ship here. Big blob of mangonels, and Janissary is now coming in, and the Janissaries can just dive in and snipe that mangonel to prevent the ram from being picked off. Indeed, that's very, very nice from Lix. So far, the mangonel goes down as well, but this is a nice play from Lix, and mark my words, I feel like once again SalzZ might be letting this game slip out of their grasp. Even though Lix just mangled down his own ram, but there is no more mangonels to take down the rams, and this is the difference between conks and Janissaries. Janissaries can snipe mangonels very, very easily, and that allows your rams to stay up and take down the towers. Yo actually has a castle in his base indeed. That also explains the double transport. He's just escorting vultures. He has nowhere to go. He has absolutely nowhere to go, as he's just mass migrating to Lix's base. So at this pace, however, I am starting to like Winchester's position still a little bit better, because Classic Pro is now slowly dying. Like, he's actually actively dying now. But Yo is going to die faster. Yo is going to have to rebuild everything in a moment. And the main difference is that Lix is 1 TC 33 Voyagers, whereas Winchester behind this one is 2 TCs. So there's going to be like 2 half-dead players, 1 from each team. And there is going to be... as they're looking for the final transport. Look at that. How they're running for a transport. Save us. Save the villagers, and they will be able to run away for a moment. Mangonels taking down the tower over here as well. So Yo's got officially annihilated. He's gonna have to rebuild everything, and that's the difference. Like, Classic Pro at least has something here. Back at home, he's got 39 villagers compared to 27. And really, if these fire ships actually paid attention, they would have intercepted Yo's villagers and transports. But I think the main difference maker is, first of all, now, Winchester could actually castle drop Lix, because Lix has nothing back at home, and that could be a disaster for Lix. Still, those Janissaries are being managed very, very well for Lix, but at this point, Yo is pretty much dead, like actually officially dead, and indeed that's a castle drop from Winch. And he's already having the advantage in eco compared to his opponent. Rams trying to take down the house, stone walls to prevent that from happening. Really, if this was a Conquistador or run-by play, this wouldn't work for Lix. But the Janissaries allow you to snipe down mangonels from a greater distance, and that's a massive advantage. So now Classic Pro is stalling this one out, and really all Classic Pro needs to do is just slow down the opponent as much as possible. Whenever possible, he could actually try adding a couple of fishing ships, because Yo technically is supposed to be off from water, even though Yo is actually going for a fish boom, man. I think Winchester might need to go for his own ships here, and this is a bit of a mistake from Lix. He's not stopping that tower. That's a big mistake from Lix. He could have stopped that tower with all the Janissaries that he has had, and now the tower just needs to focus down the villagers, and that castle is not going up from Lix, and I think this is where things fall apart for WWP. Losing all those mangonels, or all those Janissaries to the mangonel shot, it's only 4 villagers, 5 villagers building that castle. That is not going up against the guard tower, whereas this castle will definitely go up. SalzZ will even things out here as things stand, because indeed Yo and Lix will call the GG. SalzZ not going down easily, and they will go for game number 3 with an even scoreline. Very, very nice game from SalzZ, and I was somewhat skeptical about this game plan for SalzZ, but I think the difference was that Winchester was able to do more damage to Yo than what Lix was able to do to Classic Pro. And Lix did all the right things, but it was just a little too slow. So with that, even if this castle drop doesn't happen, you could take a look at the ecos and say, if you just look at it, 103 villagers against 78. Classic Pro has had a very, very nice hold here, I have to say. He was under a lot of pressure. What I didn't like is that he just let Yo... How is Yo having 9 fishing ships in this game? How is that even possible? Obviously, Classic Pro was too busy not dying, but still, you get the point that there was a little bit low water presence, so to say, from SalzZ. But still, they end up winning this one, and this means that we're going to either Coast to Mountain or Team Islands as the home maps of WWP. For Team Islands, they have Teuton, or wait, they have Portuguese and Teutons. I think that's gonna be Portuguese and Teutons. Because remember 2v2 World Cup? Lix actually did a landing with Teutons and goes for a fast castle landing with Teuton Knights and then Siege. That's very possible. And then Coast to Mountain would be Mongols and Burgundians or Burmese. And then you would go Regicide Fortress on Teutons Franks, maybe. Other side, Italians and Sicilians or Italians Byzantines seem like an option. Cumans will go for Regicide Fortress and Coast to Mountain will probably be Indians. So let's take a look at the next game. I would think that Mr.Yo and Lix will go for Team Islands first, and I am wrong. We're going to Coast to Mountain, a Nomad start, something that Chinese players love to play. Chinese players are definitely one of the more active people in the Nomad community, so they really know how to use the leverage of the map that they are given when it comes to a Nomad start. They have a very, very nice perception overall at how to play Nomad. We'll have Winchester and Classic Pro in warm colors. On the right side, Classic Pro is playing yellow Indians, and we will have Japanese for Winchester in red. I like that combination. Japanese fishing ships on such contested ponds make quite a lot of sense for WWP or for SalzZ. Other side, Burgundians for Lix in green and Mongols for Mr.Yo in blue. I love the Mongols, but I massively dislike Burgundians. What will they do here? Both players are actually placing their TCs closer to the mountain region, so I wonder if Yo and Lix will actually go for a lot of water engagements. If not, the Japanese will just outboom them. So that's something to point out. Early board coming in here for Lix. And I think the real question is, what is Yo planning to do with his TCs here? I mean, from one perspective, I understand it, because you are close to stone, and being close to stone means that you are able to start adding villagers on stone early, get early castles up. But you're also quite far away from your huntables. As you see, Yo is sending out villagers on the hunt, dropping an early mill. If he's going for a mill, he's not going to go for a dock, that's for sure. And what this means for us is that he wants to completely live off hunting. Whereas for Lix, he's got some villagers on the south for the wood line, goes mostly for hunting as well, but no dock either. Whereas SalzZ will both go for a dock. I like this approach a lot better for SalzZ, to be honest. Because if you and Lix are not contesting the water, then that's going to be a massive eco lead. And Mongols hunting this, Mongols hunting that, it doesn't compensate for being behind by 10 eco, because the opponent has Japanese fishing ships. And as fast as villagers are gathering, like Mongol hunt, Japanese fishing ships are just as good at doing that. So I feel like I like the game plan here for SalzZ a little bit better. You start the Bactrian Camel here for scouting, and Winchester will spot the villagers. So Lix will fight water, but if you ask me, I like Japanese versus Burgundians. I like Japanese a lot more on water. So Yo and Lix will have to go for some very aggressive land aggression. Otherwise, I'm not so sure what they can possibly do against a massive fishing eco advantage. So Classic Pro is out in the open, which could mean that early field age aggression from Yo with scouts could find him. Whereas on the other side, Lix will go for some fishing eco, but you see that this dock is also delayed. So he's just now getting in the first fishing ship. Whereas on the other side, Classic Pro and Winch already have 2 and 3 respectively. On the north, we will have Classic Pro, as I said, with Indians. And it looks like Classic Pro might be playing water here, because he's sending out a lot of villagers to wood. So what is that TC? That's actually a good question. It's a good TC. because the baobab trees actually have quite a lot of wood on them, but more important, there's a lot of hunt here in the middle. That's what is special about close to mountain, that you have wood and gold here on the right, wood, gold, and stone on the left, but no food here. And the middle has all the food with an awful lot of huntables. Speaking of huntables, Yo is going to ride that advantage into fast feudal age. He is gonna be up to feudal with a 19 pop overall uptime. The problem is that his feudal age timing is not as great as the opponent's feudal times, and you see why. He doesn't have the fishing eco, and I did mention that Mongols hunting is great, but the opponent is also hunting, and Mongols, like the difference between Mongols and non-Mongol hunt isn't enough to compensate for your opponent having free fishing ships when you don't have any. So with that, we will have a Classic Pro bringing in another boar over here. You should mostly be focusing on hunt here in early stages of the game. I like these wars from Vinch as well. They will play it safe. They probably know that land engagements will be likely, and indeed Yo is coming in with scouts. Now this is something that Yo likes to do on this map, and that is add scouts so he can actually secure map control. He's not adding scouts to kill the opponent. He's adding scouts so that he can secure all the huntables in the middle and still have a great food eco. So it's more about the map presence, and being able to constantly mill these huntables is what matters for Mr.Yo here. So we will have double docks for Elix over here. Why is there a normal house between the huts? Because I believe that Classic Pro built a house. That's the short answer to that. So we'll have walls coming in here for Vinch. He will wall off the right side of the map. It's going to be Winchester playing water for now, going for dock number 3. Lix is also up to feudal age, but he can't afford a second fire galley, so he will only be rocking with 1 for now. We will have scouts coming in here for Yo. Walls are already up on the wood line of Classic Pro, but they're a little bit wacky with villagers getting stuck a tiny bit, and he's gotta be careful. He's gonna be careful because if scouts jump on his wood line, that could be a disaster. He's gonna have some nice little walls over here. The other thing is that this part of the map is still open, and Yo's scouts could do quite a lot of damage. Yo's still bringing in boars. You see that he wants to leverage that Mongol hunt advantage. That's gonna be close. That's gonna be a close lure for Yo. Yo! That was a 1 HP will saved, and the reason why the villager was safe is because he actually started walking up hills, and the final shot of the rhino was an uphill shot, and he delivered 4 damage instead of 5. That is why he actually saved that villager. Yo has a 1 HP villager somewhere over here. This guy. He barely survived that. So it looks like we will have scouts coming in as well for a Classic Pro, going for the walls as well. For now, fire galleys are out, and honestly, Winchester is a much better water player than Lix. And that is something to take into account. Also worth noting that, as I said, right now, SalzZ has a slight eco lead, mostly coming from the fact that they have the fishing eco working for them, whereas it's only 3 fishing ships for Lix and 0 for Mr.Yo. Yo is bringing quite a lot of scouts, as Classic Pro will have a mining camp here, nice walls coming in for him, and they will be fully walled soon. And if it's fully walled, then you can definitely just afford to fight on water completely. Lix coming in here with the repairs, a demo comes in and the demo could sink the repair villager. That's the big advantage. Even if you just hit one ship, if you kill the repair villager, that's a massive advantage. But the bigger deal is, I believe, the completely untouched fishing eco for Winchester and Classic Pro. Speaking of untouched, their land eco is not that clean. We will have scouts pushing the back of Winchester and Classic Pro's base. For now, what you have to focus on is just matching the scout numbers, though. If you are Winchester and Classic Pro, honestly, if you think about that, I like Indians here quite a bit when it comes to dealing with Mongols, because Mongols want to go for Mangudai, but you could just get overrun by camels. So I think Yo and Lix could struggle a little bit when it comes to, you know, fighting against the camel flood. They will find Winchester's Goldmine, which is far from ideal. Scouts now come in. I think Winch will lose 1 villager here, but that's all that's gonna happen. Spear now coming in, and that's going to be a 4th scout as well. More scouts coming in on the other side. They will probably try to prevent a re-walling here. At this point, it looks like SalzZ has a pretty confident water control, and you see that Classic Pro will actually beat Mr.Yo into Castle Age, most likely. That's a beautiful find for Mr.Yo. Very, very nice perception. He realizes that, hey, my opponent more probably has a repair villager, so I might as well snipe it. Still, it is 10 fire galleys against 2. Ultimate water control for SalzZ, And what that means is that they will just have a much better eco overall, even though it doesn't show in the villager numbers. But it is a very consistent food income, and you can see that this is why Classic Pro is actually comparable in terms of castle age timing to his opponent. He's making a market just now that actually isn't needed to go up unless he wants to buy food, which he kind of needs to. But now, you gotta go for 4 camos. I think if you're Classic Pro, like double, maybe even triple stable camos should be the name of the game. Yo is being very disruptive here with the scouts. Yo's got 0 upgrades. I feel like Classic Pro could just commit to those, because if you trade it off, you can take a very decent trade here. It's better to trade it off and leave like 1 scout with low HP that a villager can kill, other than just letting them run around, because you are just trying to distract the opponent over here as much as possible. The free scouts are still alive, so Classic Pro is gonna have to be careful. Castle Age on the way for Classic Pro first, and here's the big advantage. You see Winchester's food eco, he's gonna be able to go up as well. Lix is trying to add an additional dog, but I feel like that's already too late for them. And at this very moment, this villager could be picked off. Farms will be added by Classic Pro. He's adding Horse Color just now. Yo is also on the way to Castle Age. He's mining stone, so he will get to Mango Dive, but early Mango Dive will struggle quite badly. I have to say that I massively dislike how Classic Pro is handling this free scouts inside their eco. These free scouts killed like 6 villagers already, and that's unacceptable. One of the reasons why they don't have a big eco lead, or well, they have 5, is because you actually killed 3 villagers here with scouts that shouldn't have killed a single one of them. That is a massive disaster for Classic Pro's defense there. That being said, they still have a fairly considerable lead here. That's a nice demo shot from Lix, as he will most likely get cleaned up from the water, which raises the question of what exactly Lix is going to do with Burgundians, because that's the other problem. Burgundians, what do they even give you? They give you Cavalier, but you don't want to go Cavalier against Camels, and I feel like either Arbalest and Camel from SalzZ, or potentially like Halberdier or Pikeman play from Winch, and Camels could both just annihilate the Mongol plus Burgundian combination. I feel like the draft is slightly better for SalzZ right now. So, with that, we're gonna have scouts bashing their way through. So, WWP just wants to get to the other side of the bracket. Well, too bad that the teams that get into the quarterfinals will be randomly matched up against each other to make sure that you can't, you know, throw away games in the group stage, so you can actually get an easier opponent in the single elimination phase. So I feel like the civilizations are actually massively mismatched for you and Lix. It could still be Mangadai and Paladin, but I like the Imp Camo play a lot better over here, and the Japanese could also go for Arabs, they could go for like Halberdiers in this situation, and now is the time for SalzZ to add more fish, because one way to have an insane advantage from this one is just adding a massive boom. So, for now, it's 86 to 75 villagers. We will have 3 TCs coming in here for Mr.Yo, and you shouldn't sleep on Mr.Yo, because you should never underestimate the power of the Mangadai, for example. But I feel like if Classic Pro just pretty much matches the boom of Mr.Yo and tries to be kind of even in terms of numbers, as Lix is trying to do another redocking here. He's really trying to push the opponent's fishing eco, but Winchester will just do War Galley. I don't think that Winchester really needs War Galley to stop this, as a scout will come in to try and snipe down these villagers. So I don't think that War Galley is really needed to clean this up, but it's better to be safe than sorry, as Galenet is on the way as well. Villagers will get cleaned up, and I don't think this was worth it for Lix. He's trying to get War Galley upgrade in, but he's not gonna have any ships. And one of the advantages of having the ships here is that you can burn your way through these walls, and that allows camels to run into the base of Lix. Lix, who just reached Castle Agent, has no TCs up, and this would be a disaster for WWP. If Classic Pro stops this TC, then that's an absolute annihilation on Lix. This is still 72% only. I think the TC will go up, but the question is how many villagers. Because that is gonna be quite a lot of villagers dead, and even if it goes up, you can actually deny the wood from this side. Indeed, it's gonna go up. Lix ends up losing 11 villagers. I think 3 of them were fishing ships, but that's still -8 for Lix. He's down to 35. In here, tries to quick wall these in. Yo is coming in with some camos to help, but 102 eco against 81, and I did mention that I think that SalzZ is the underdog of this set, and WWP should have the upper hand. But never count out SalzZ. SalzZ actually played the decider game against Doubt and Slam on this map, and they won, I believe. So, really, SalzZ is a strong team, and they're very determined on these specialized maps. If they have some good game plan, they can definitely surprise WWP. And it looks like another villager will go down from Lix. He saves a 1 HP villager, which is, I think, a value for him in this one, but I like these camos here. Just the presence of these camos mean that the villagers made on this TC can go out here, which helps Classic Pro prevent Lix from being able to balance his eco, which is a big deal. Like, crippling the opponent's eco balance like this is actually a massive, massive advantage. Yo is forced to make camos as well, which is delaying his boom as well. 118 villagers against 95, and Winchester also is a free TC boom, whereas Lix is on 2 TCs. Lix is really trying a redocking. But look at this! This is Winchester! This is Winchester's dock, man. He just plays the dock over here with the villager. I didn't even see that. Now, Lix will try... Oh, Winch just laying the gold in the corner. He will build houses here too, because that's where the trade could be flowing through all the time. And, I mean, SalzZ is just playing this one so well. They have a 30 villagers lead. They're able to sort of disrupt the eco of Lix here. Lix will try to go for a couple of demos, but once again, Winchester is forced to make ships, but he has a free TC boom, whereas Lix is only on 2 TCs and 45 villagers as opposed to 70. And Winch also lames gold mines. And while that could be an enormous demo shot... Demo? Well, that's a decent demo. That's a very, very decent demo. Another big demo hit could come in here. And I have to say that this is not necessarily good fights for Winch anymore. But still, we shouldn't underestimate the fact that there is a massive eco lead for Winch and Classic Pro. In this one, there won't be any trade in the future for Yo and Lix, although it's not really a big deal because there is a lot of gold on the left side, and it looks like we'll have an Arbalest play from Winchester, who's floating a lot of food, man. This is the power of the Japanese fishing. He suddenly starts to float 1,000 food. Still, Japanese fishing ships are quite hard to kill. That's an advantage as well for Winch here. And I don't think that he necessarily needs to destroy these docks. He just needs to make sure that he's actually able to take a good engagement on water and prevent Lix from coming onto water. Now that's quite a lot of conversions in for Lix, and Lix is starting to be scary on water. And this is a way to lose the game for SalzZ, because they're not ready to snowball this game just yet. Still, I think that Winchester, the best thing he could do, especially considering he's stacking into crossbow with Thumbring, Botkin, Ballistics, he could make a couple of war galleys. Because while demos are able to even out the numbers of fire ships on the water, if you have like 20 war galleys here, maybe even just 10, Lix won't be able to do much against that. So, for now it's gonna be Imperial Age. Is it Imp for Winch? Winch can actually afford a castle, but it looks like he won't Imp. He had a lot of food, but he decided not to use it for imping. Demo could be getting a reasonable connection in there. Monks trying to convert as many fire ships as they can, some more demos coming in. Obviously, the more and more forward we go in this game, the less and less important the water is going to be. So I think by the time Lix takes back water, there is going to be no deep fish left. And obviously losing this much fishing eco would hurt for SalzZ, but I feel like the real advantage of fishing eco is right now. And you see that Yo is also losing a couple of Mangadite to the camos, which hurts really badly because it's easier to mess the camos than it is to mess the Mangadite, but Yo comes in with a big raid and this could be huge. This raid could be huge. Mangadite inside your eco like that could make you lose an awful lot of villagers. Winchester now selling a stone, interestingly, so he probably wants to get up. Winchester is also floating a lot of wood. Winchester has 1,000 wood in the bank, so he's trying his best to get a couple of crossbows out, although those Mangadai are fairly decently upgraded, but still, trading crossbows and camos to Mangadai is always a good situation. So I feel like this isn't that bad for SalzZ. Yo, however, is actually going to be the first one to click into Imperial, and that's not something to underestimate. Getting a second and the third castle in just now, and never underestimate Mongols in Imp. I think Classic Pro will need to Imp himself very soon. There will be a forward castle, I believe, from Winch, and the idea will probably be that he will just try to go for ARBs. He's also clicking into Imperial. By the way, I would like to give a shout out to Lix for being able to reboom on land very, very nicely. Lix won't be able to be a factor in this game, military-wise, I would say. So we might just see a full sling for Mr.Yo once he reaches Imperial, because he needs to click to Imp first for slinging. Yo is a 220 away from Imperial. Classic Pro is 3 minutes away, so there's going to be a window where it's going to be very, very well upgraded Mangadai against somewhat underwhelming Camel upgrades, but Winchester is going to have the Arbalasts on the field for him, although the numbers aren't impressing. It's only 15 of them. They have good upgrades, but the numbers aren't really there. So for now it looks like Lix is going to stonewall himself, knowing that there is an opening here and he could get raided anytime. Which player needs to be in for slinging? The player that is sending resources. Because if it wasn't through the rule, players would just... Oh, that's a beautiful surround. That's a beautiful surround. They take down 2 Mangadais, make it free. And it might not seem like much, but free Mangadai is free Mangadai. So the idea behind, you know, not allowing sling is that if you would be allowed to sling from like Feudal Age or so, then players would just use the bad Sif for slinging. By the way, it's impressive that Mr.Yo is still keeping Vultures on Hunt in the middle of the map. That is just absolutely crazy. He took so much Hunt overall. Now it is 20 Mangadai. The Mangadai numbers are steadily growing. And if it's Mangadai Onager, it could be something to be problematic. For Vinch at Classic Pro, I like this for Vinch. I like this for Vinch quite a bit. This sneaky villager is not something... Look at this. Lix has no idea about this place over here. This actually lames this gold, prevents future trade, and there could be also... I'm not going to say light cap from Japanese because that's a little bit underwhelming, but maybe Arbs coming in at the back of the opponent's base. That would be a disaster, and it looks like they will now jump on Lix here. Indian Camels have a building attack bonus. That's the MTC! That's the MTC for Lix, and that would be a disaster. Indian Camels have building attack bonus. I don't think this TC survives until Imp. Lix is gonna have to commit everything to repair this. 72%, 50% HP. If Classic Pro actually focuses down the Villagers, I think he can stop this Imp. He can stop this Imperial, and indeed he's now jumping on the Villagers. 82%, the Mangadai come in. I think they will save the Imp progress. This is gonna be awfully close, but obviously far from ideal from Lix. They save the Imp progress, but that's Arbalest, and you can see that Yo has to take this fight now. And immediately upon seeing that the Imp progress will be saved, Lix will run away, and he's taking into Cavalier, but guess what? Japanese have great Halberdiers to deal with that, or Indians have great Camels. Heavy Camel in 40 seconds, even though the biggest problem for Souls right now is Archer armor missing for Winchester, as Classic Pro is still waiting for the opportunity to unleash the Heavy Camels. And for now, +4 defense coming in for Winchester immediately. Not a good fight for Classic Pro here before Heavy Camel. He's got the +4 defense already. Drill Onagers for Yo. Yo once again has to do some crazy carrying here, but it's Mongols, fully boomed Mongols with 4 castles, and that is not something to overlook with all those camels being eaten. Imp Camel being teched into Karaparuto for Winchester, so he wants to shell those castles, and while Yo is distracted with this push here, the castles will actually be under attack. Imperial Camel 140 away. The Paladins won't do much here because Imp Camels will eat them. And what is this? Vinch actually deleted the barracks, made 3 spearmen. That was interesting from Vinch. So now Camels coming in. They will try to keep away the Mangadai from sniping the traps. You have to have a consistent trap production. Kataparuto in, which means that they will have those traps destroy that castle very easily. Coinage coming for Yo. I wonder if he wants to sling. And now Classic Pro and Vinch clearly see that there is Onagers coming in here, intercept a couple of the Mangadai. Obviously the big advantage that Indians and Japanese will be having here is that they are not reliant on the castles as much as the opponents are. Onager trying to get a good shot in here. Onager will eventually go down to the Camels. This is actually some nice shots with the Onagers, but the problem for Yo here with the Mangadai is that he's constantly forced to retreat, and that's Imp Camel in a moment. And with that, the other castle is already under attack. Yo is just unable to access those traps, and firing downhills with Karaparuto traps, they just destroy those buildings really fast. Look at that. They just absolutely melt that building. And it looks like SalzZ will take over the set here. Paladins are trying to come in and help, but you don't have a good answer to imp camos. Yo is down to 2 castles. Yo is down to 2 castles, and at this very moment it is 98-9 military against 56, 40 imp camos and 45 arbs versus 24 paladins that do not have bloodlines and +4 attack, and just 24 Mangada. That's 24 Mangada is the bigger problem, I believe, for WWP, especially with those imp camos jumping on the Mangada. Yo is not looking apparently, because Yo is going to lose so many Mangada here by the time he reacts. Trebs once again shelling the castle as the Paladins are trying to stop this one. This castle will go down just in time. So it's once again just a small detail, but before that trap went down, another castle goes down, and there's 2 castles only for Yo. Even if he has good production, it's tough to match up against Arbalests and have imp camos, but not with 2 castles. 2 castles is nearly impossible to match up against that. Only 19 Mangudai now on the field, and SalzZ seems to take over in this set. What an absolutely amazing series. They're using the hill to their advantage very well as well. I think they're starting to realize that, okay, my opponent is running out of Mangudai, so this is the moment where they will start switching into Arbalest or Halberdier. You see that the scale mail was coming in for Vinch, and he's making barracks, misses the shot with the onagers, and now Trebs are taking down the TCs. Yo is falling back more and more. The Imp Camel actually cleans up all the food eco for Lix here. This one lonely camel killed everything, and he's also taking down the TC. Lix is probably too busy microing his cavalry, so he's not looking here, but 23 Mangala against 41 Imp Camels. The middle here is getting cleaned up as well, and this TC actually goes down to 1 camel, by the way. The hero camel, indeed. So, SalzZ looking really, really good here. They just need to make sure they don't throw away the game from this point, but if they take down 1 more castle from Yo, then I think it's a guaranteed win for them. There is actually now 3 castles once again for Yo, but the beautiful thing about this one for SalzZ is that they're actually controlling the hill very nicely. So, being able to fire down hills with those traps, those are Karaparuto traps as well, they are great. And honestly, the civs are better for SalzZ. I think their draft overall is better because the Mongols is a top tier civ for this map, but what about the Burgundians? They are very, very underwhelming, and I think the civilization combination for SalzZ just feels a lot better. Trebs are still up, they're targeting the siege workshop though and not the castle. Interestingly, they're probably taking those down to make sure onagers can pop out and hit the arbalest. They catch the edge of that blob, but workshops are now down, and it's just an endless flood of imp camos. SalzZ, by the way, is setting up trade already. Yo calls the GG, and SalzZ takes game number 3 here. So far, a bit of an upset, because if you think about it, on the Arabia game, SalzZ also had a massive lead, and now I think SalzZ can be very, very sad that they sort of lost their game over there, because they had their moments in that one, and that would be another win for them in this case. The only win so far from Yo and Lix were Arabia, and they lose their first home map now. SalzZ taking over in this set, and when you look at this group, say you have Doubt and Slam, you have Yo and Lix, you have SalzZ, and you have Vodka and Rice, I think most of the people would have said WWP wins this group, but there is a possibility that SalzZ will go for the win. So with that, we have a win here for SalzZ, and really, I think it comes down to just the unit composition, and Tuples is very, very heavily focused on selecting appropriate civs, and I think that Winchester and Classic Pro with Japanese and Indians is a much, much better civ combo than what Yo and Lix were able to use with Burgundies and Mongols. And you have to consider something. Japanese was given to Winchester and Classic Pro by the opponent. So Yo and Lix, for whatever reason, they decided to give Japanese to the opponent, and they pay the price very, very heavily right now, because Japanese is an absolutely amazing civ on this map. And now you can hear Memb screaming in the distance, because we will go to the second home map of WWP. Team Islands. I did mention that I think Teutons Portuguese versus Italians Sicilians is gonna be the composition, and I am apparently right about this one. Team Islands, a map that Yo and Lix played in 2v2 World Cup, and in that set, Lix actually went for fast castle Teuton landing with knights and siege. We will jump into game number 4 in this one. So we will have on the right side Winchester and or on the right side is going to be our WWP team in cold colors. Yo and Lix. Lix will be playing Teutons in green, and his teammate is gonna be Yo as Portuguese in blue. It's guaranteed Lix is going to land, so SalzZ knows that. The real question is how do they respond to that. We'll have a Sicilian Classic Pro in yellow. He will be probably doing landing defense, and on the other side, we'll have Italians for Vinch. So the real question is, and that's always the question, can Lix do enough damage with his landing here to delay both players and allow Yo to have a massive fish boom and just overrun water? Because that's the main question. Lix will land, that's guaranteed. The real question is what Classic Pro's reaction will be here. So we will have, on the right side, as I said, Classic Pro in yellow. He's playing Sicilians, which means counter-towering is harder for him. He can't just go for counter-tower, needs to go for a donjon to defend. But other than that, I think his map is actually very underwhelming. All of these gold mines are very, very exposed, and when you are potentially facing a landing, you want at least one safe gold and one safe stone. Neither is really available for Classic Pro, so I feel like his map is just not stunning by any means. Other side, Winchester's map is actually fairly bad as well. The golds are not super safe, especially in case you get landed. Yo's base is actually pretty nice overall, and Lix's base doesn't really matter because he will just go for a landing either. So the real question is, Lix could go for a field age landing, but I think that they might utilize the play that they did in the 2v2 World Cup, which was, as I said, the fast castle landing of Teutons. So, a little bit of a passive start over here, obviously, with Team Islands. We'll have a side dock play from Yo, so he's going to open galleys. Back dock for Winchester, but this might turn into a side dock galley play here. So this might just be the first dock that he's dropping in the corner, and he might follow it up with dock here and here. So it is very possible that we could see like a side dock galley play here for him. I think a fast castle would be overly ambitious. Back dock for Classic Pro. That means that he's probably going for landing defense here, knowing that the opponent will land. And the reason why you do back dock in that case is because you want to make sure that your fishing eco is as safe as possible. We will have Lix with a front dock for his landing. I'm not necessarily a fan of that because his fishing eco could be exposed. And as I said, Yo will be on the side dock. So, for now, both players, or all players, to be precise, are pushing in the air. That's not major surprise. So I did mention this multiple times when casting Team Islands. The reason why you push in the air is because you have nothing else to do with your scout. Might as well use it to get some extra advantage from the early food eco, and more importantly, save a lot of your piggies for feudal age, because you want to avoid adding farms as long as possible on islands. So being able to save your piggies actually helps quite a bit. And no surprise about this, we will have a Winchester coming in with Loom. So he knows exactly that a landing is very, very possible here. And they will play this one safe. So that's no surprise either. Whereas on the other side, you already see a landing defense as well from Classic Pro. So he's gonna wall himself up, and I would be massively surprised if he didn't go for a defensive barracks and then potentially a stable for scouts. Sicilians will actually benefit from that as well. Like if Lix is mixing in spearmen to deal with the defensive scouts, then that is something that Sicilians are actually nice against, and I think that Classic Pro just missed that transport. Lix is not going to go for a fast castle landing. Lix will go for a fuel-age landing here. I am 100% sure that Classic Pro knows that a landing is coming, but he's trying to look for it and he missed it by a tile, and that could be big. Because you can see that he's looking over here and he's making the barracks here as well. Now, one thing I do not like is Lix making the barracks on the opponent's island, because if you do it, you have absolutely no defense back at home. I think it's better to make the barracks back at home, because that way you can start constructing the stable immediately on the opponent's side of the water, and you will also have a barracks back at home for defense. So Vinch indeed going for sort of this side dog galley style. Mr.Yo will do the same thing himself. Obviously Portuguese will have an edge over Italians in this one, and like you can see that Classic Pro doesn't even have to scout the landing in order to know that his opponent will do that. He is just expecting this from Lix. With 2 turns, that's very, very predictable. Now, the walls are not up yet, and that is a massive problem right now for Classic Pro. He spots the scout, and that scout could pick off 1 villager here from Classic Pro, as Classic Pro is trying to rush up the walls, but that's -1 villager. Immediately comes out with a spearman, and there will be scouts as well. Winchester is already walled up, though, and that's very, very nice. Overall, Teutons can definitely operate with towers as well. Quick was failing for Classic Pro here, losing a villager. But this is what I was talking about. I think Scout and Spear is actually better for Sicilians than it is for Teutons, because believe it or not, Sicilians suffer from less bonus damage, so you can get away with bigger mistakes, so to say. You can much more easily afford to jump on the opponent's Spearman for now. And I have to say that SalzZ's landing defense here is actually fairly decent so far. On the water, as I said, Portuguese should have the upper hand with the higher HP on the galleys, the cheaper gold cost. Winchester already has fletching. That's something that just now comes in for Mr.Yo. But Winchester's only doing double docks, whereas his opponent is also on double docks, but 1 extra galley in this screen at least for Winchester. Still, one thing to consider is that the eco for Yo is untouched, although he also has to wall himself up, so it's not like he was spending less wall or less wood walling, because just like Vinch, he had to wall himself up because he knows exactly that his teammate might not be able to go for any kind of defense. There's a hole here. There is a hole here. So that definitely needs to be fixed. We are gonna have... oh, that's actually a little bit sloppy from Classic Pro. He opens up the gate, and this is actually a very, very nice touch from Winchester. He takes down the ships in this part of the map, and this is looking extremely good for SalzZ, I'm not gonna lie. This is looking extremely good for them. They have a 3 villagers lead. Lix's landing isn't really doing much, to be honest. He did kill, I think, 1 villager from Classic Pro, but in exchange, Classic Pro has an untouched fishing eco at the back. Lix lost his fishing eco himself, and unless Yo can do much of a damage on water, Mr.Yo is going to be in trouble with Lix, and SalzZ could actually win this set if that happens. Now, those scouts run to the Spearman of Lix, and even though they resist the extra damage, that's not great. But one thing that they avoided is additional beings being constructed. That's very important. Both landing villagers from Lix were killed. So this wasn't efficient for Classic Pro, but what he actually managed to accomplish with it is making sure that Lix doesn't have any more villagers here, which is very important, because if you would add an archer range here for Lix for a couple of archers to pick off spears, this could be completely different. But as things stand, Lix's landing here is going to be halted. He's got spearmen, he's got scouts, he can't do anything with those. Castle Age coming in first by a massive margin for Winchester, even without selling his stone. That is crazy, man. This is just looking so good for SalzZ. I mean, Yo is investing quite heavily into fish, but Winchester 4 fishing ships, Yo also 4 fishing ships. I'm not sure how Winchester was able to afford a that much faster castle age time. I mean, he's Italians, that's for sure, but that's just a small part of the thing. It's not that cheaper to go up into castle age with Italians compared to Portuguese, especially because Portuguese spend less gold on their combat ships. So more Voyagers are being brought in here by Lix. I expected nothing less from him. However, once again, the scouts are being pushed away by the Spearmen, and Classic Pro is just lurking and waiting for the opportunity to kill the Villagers with the scouts. And look at this. This could be extremely good. I think Winchester will wait until he takes a fight here against Yo, and then he will hit the back of the fishing eco for Yo. Now we have 3 docks as well for Vinch, and he actually transitions into fire ships, interestingly. This is an interesting decision. He goes for careening, but he wants to capitalize on this advantage, but he needs Vorgali, first and foremost. Why is he not getting the Vorgali upgrade, man? This could be a big mistake from Vinch. He's throwing away his Castle Age lead. He should just cancel this Fire Galley, get the Vorgali upgrade, and then he would absolutely annihilate Yo's fish. And look at this. Yo is forced to chase, and now Yo is forced to fall back as well. Yo's still 50 seconds away from a Castle Age in this one. WWP's eco is better, but we will have swords clicking up to Castle Age now. Towers are now coming in from our green player, which means that Winchester might need to counter tower this one in order to make sure that it doesn't lose his gold. Vorgali still not coming in for Vinch. That is a massive, massive mistake. Because if he actually had Vorgali, he would be destroying Yo by now. A town center actually is being rushed up here by Winchester to prevent this aggression from escalating even further. Lix is also going up to Castle Age here as the last player in the game. We're gonna have Vorgali coming in for Yo as well. But it's going to be 5 galleys and 8 fire ships versus 13 Vorgalis. I think the fire ship here is a mistake from Vinch, or he should have been a lot more aggressive with those. Because once the opponent has Vorgalis, those fire ships will be somewhat underwhelming. Bloodlines coming in for the scouts of Classic Pro in this one. So we will have the docks slowly going down here for Yo, which actually prevents him from regrouping his fleet inside the docks with this fleet over here. Only +1 attack though for Vinch. So apparently Vinch wants to switch into fire ships entirely because he's not even getting Bodkin Arrow for himself. It's worth pointing out that considering that both Vinch and Classic Pro are safe back at home, we could see Classic Pro with a forward dock and potentially a counter landing, and just a couple of knights on the opponent's island could be very devastating. Here comes a demo from Mr.Yo. I like the 16 war galleys as opposed to 11 fire ships, 5 war galleys a lot more. So I feel like that's actually a nice find though. Winchester should be able to take some of those ships down here. As chain botting is coming in for a Classic Pro. We'll also have knights queued up for Lix here, but this is an awful fight for Winchester, and if they lose the game, they will lose it on the decision of Winch going for fire ships. Or, well, fire ships is one thing, but he didn't actually go for fire ships fast enough. And he's still 3 dogs going for fire ships, but that's way too many war galleys to deal with. And you can snowball a game with fire ships if you have massive numbers advantage, but that's not the case here. And this is the stage where the war galleys will just be a lot more efficient than the fire ships. Big counterattack here by Lix. He's gonna go for Monk and Siege approach here, but Classic Pro, I think all he needs to do is just send a couple of knights to the opponent's island, and suddenly things could fall apart for Yo and Lix. So with that, I think Winchester is looking for a sandwich here, and this might be a big trap. I think Winchester did a big trap in the qualifiers as well, and this could be an enormous trap by Winch. Maybe attacked with those fire ships a little too early, but he was just waiting for Yo to jump in on those docks, and that's exactly what Winch has been waiting for. A very, very good trap over here, and Yo's pathfinding is also really bad here. Oh boy, that's a disaster for Yo. He's losing way too many ships, and demos coming in here to relieve, and that is the only reason why Yo can say that he is happy with that fight, because as good as the surround was from Winch, those demos pretty much cancelled everything that he has had. Winch is just 5 on ships. Massive, massive misplay, I think, from Winch going for fire ships in this situation. I mean, I understand the fear from caravels, but on the other hand, fire ships won't actually win you a game even against galleys. So now it is very troublesome for SalzZ. Ecos are still dead even, but Lix has a foothold on the opponent's island. Here come the knights from A Classic Pro trying to finish off the Monks. This is actually a good fight here. It's actually a very, very good fight for Classic Pro, is it? He still has quite a lot of Knights. The Pikemen deal less damage against Classic Pro's Knights, and now Lix is actually winning the land. I don't think that SalzZ played this one well. I just don't think that they played it very, very well. Classic Pro is doing basically the same thing that Lix is trying to do, just worse. Whereas Winchester just massively misplayed Water overall. So it's one thing that he went for the fire ships, but that should have been way faster fire ships before the opponent gets the Wargate upgrade. He had like a 1.5 minutes advantage into Castle Age, and he didn't really use it. And now Lix is actually moving into the base of Winch, and this is the moment where the advantage for our Chinese team will start to show. Because Winchester is forced to make siege workshops and monks to defend, and Yo is just booming on for ATCs. I think... I'm trying not to say it's GG too early, but this is looking extremely bad for SalzZ, mainly because this is what I was referring to. If Lix can distract both players, hit Winchester and Classic Pro at the same time, Yo will just outboom them. This is why WWP is so dangerous as a team. Just being able to distract both players, that is what Lix is doing, and then Yo is just going to overrun everything with ships. It's 74 eco, he will click into Imperial, and I mean, Winch is dead. Winch has got like half of his eco annihilated, and while he's actually going to try and counterattack Water, Yo is going to have an absolutely untouched boom. So, as long as Winch isn't able to clean this one up, which seems very, very unlikely, this won't go their way, and once again, we're seeing this classic WWP style, where Lix is just distracting both players, allowing Yo to boom, and that's exactly what we're seeing. Now, I would think that all that Yo needs to do is just sit back and wait until Imperial, which will happen in a moment, and then just unleash the Galleons. He doesn't even have to go. It looks like he's actually going for fire ships, which I think is a bit of a mistake if you think about Imperial Age, because Portuguese, I think, do not have fast fires, but in Castle Age it actually works well, because in Castle Age you will be able to have some sort of meat shield in front of your galleys. Still, the demos are here to help out as well. Classic Pro getting husbandry, but he's just trying to clean this one up as much as possible. But WWP now has an eco lead, another big demo shot coming in, and Yo has been insane with demos, something that Winchester struggled against quite badly. Overall, SalzZ struggled against that in the Forest Pond game. We will have, like, these tables are slowly going down, but by the time they're cleaned up, it's too late. Or at least it should be too late, because Yo should be able to finish the game with Imperial Age and Galleons. Because Winch is nowhere close to Imp, Winch is nowhere close to good Galleon numbers. The only way that SalzZ can win this one, I believe, is if Classic Pro is able to get like 10-15 Knights into the base of Yo and kill like 20 villagers. That's the only way, because otherwise, Yo's eco lead, which is like 20 vills, is going to be enough. Winchester is actually redocking with front docks, but what for? That's the question. So now it's going to be some more fire ships coming in from a front dock, but I don't think that Winchester knows that his opponent is imping. Knights now coming in, will not find the villagers, and for now, Classic Pro is finally cleaning this one up with 15 Knights and Pikemen, but you could tell that he was struggling really badly to clean this one up, and by the time he does it, I think this landing accomplished its goal, which is to distract Winchester to a point where Yo is able to win Water, and that's exactly what we have seen in this one. So we'll have a demo coming in here, hitting all the Galleons, which was a nice demo overall for Winch. Fire ships on the way for Winchester as well, to try and take a fight here in the middle. But as I said, Yo is now going for Galleon. He's got all the docks in the world, and once he's got Galleon with chemistry, he will just melt those fire ships. He can also go for some more demos, and this is something that I think should have happened earlier. A transport coming in here from Classic Pro as a last effort to try and do some damage to the opponent's base, but that feels too late, although Winchester is imping. His eco is actually very, very bad, but honestly, Lix's landing has been cleaned up, and suddenly, if Classic Pro just transports everything that he has to the opponent's island and hits Mr.Yo, Mr.Yo could be in trouble. They shouldn't be attacking Lix, they have to attack Mr.Yo, but look at Mr.Yo's base. There is more holes on it than on a Swiss cheese. And oh boy, we might not be done with this game just yet, or at least that's what SalzZ is thinking. And fast fires could be something to be scared of from Mr.Yo, but really, they have to count on Classic Pro being able to hit Mr.Yo really hard. Like, Mr.Yo has to be distracted, especially considering that he has Galleons. And Galleons are always harder to micro than Fireships are, so if you distract Mr.Yo with Knights running into their base, then you can definitely make it harder for him to micro his ships, but here's the deal, the Galleons will just prevent any additional landing for the time being, and that's a big deal here. Eco is actually better for SalzZ, and that's something to think about. What if Classic Pro goes into Imperial and either starts making his own ships, or potentially sling Winchester? This is very sloppy from Classic Pro, losing all those all those knights over there, trying to kill that barracks. I mean, that barracks isn't doing that much damage, so it's not necessarily ideal that you lost so many knights. Over there, Yo is actually at 33 galleons, which is crazy. Their opponents combined for 4 ships. But I think the problem is that Lix is nowhere close to being a factor. Lix will send more villagers. They know exactly the only way that they do this is if Lix keeps being disruptive, fast fire coming in here for SalzZ, and we will probably have some sort of combat ships coming in as well for Classic Pro. Classic Pro also goes for a counter landing, and I think Classic Pro will castle drop one of the WWP players, because he's actually close in terms of stone to do that, and if he actually pops a castle on the opponent's island, that could be very devastating, because there's nothing that Lix and Yo can do to stop that. Like, you get a castle up, you get imp, and you trap down the TCs, everything. So yeah, there's not a lot of ships here for SalzZ, and Lix once again has a landing. And indeed, condos could be an interesting thing as well. I completely forgot about that. Sicilian condottieri, as the gold is gonna be castle dropped here. I think Yo noticed this. Yo saw from the houses that there is the villagers here, and castles being built faster for Sicilians, right? That bonus coming in clutch here, because this could be a doubt castle if it wasn't for Sicilian villagers. I think Sicilian villagers will be enough here, because the pikemen don't do that much damage to kill all of them. If it wasn't Sicilians, this would be a doubt castle. It's still a doubt castle. It's still a big doubt castle, man. 92%, and this could be a deciding factor in the game. Oh man, if it wasn't Sicilians, this would have been a massive doubt castle. But Sicilians even weren't able to get it up. And now this is looking really rough for SalzZ. Nice reaction from Lix, volleying that one in immediately. Defensive castle coming in for Vinch, and another doubt castle could happen here. Sergeants from Classic Pro to try and counter this one, as a castle drop comes in here from Yo and Lix. And honestly, the last 2 minutes was a disaster for SalzZ, because they were so close to turning this around. If this castle actually is successful, then this could have been a completely different game, but now it is... It should be over, to be honest, because now you have a castle in the face of Winchester here by Yo. Yo is playing out of his mind as Classic Pro tries to go for defensive castle. This was a doubt castle, sort of, from Vinch. Another doubt castle from Classic Pro. If you would actually ask why they lost this game, or well, one of the reasons why they lost is 3 doubt castles like that. Now WWP has the score lead as well, although the fast fires are slowly overrunning water, but there is still 42 galleons on the water for Yo. Yo's basically getting close to being pop-capped, whereas neither Vinch or Classic Pro isn't. Once again, Yo or Lix is just doing just enough to distract the opponents, forcing doubt castles here and here. It is just so good play from Lix. Being able to just disrupt both players while Yo is booming, and this is not the conventional way of playing Age Vampires in 2v2s. It's more about just the unique way that SalzZ is playing, or that WWP is playing. It's about the ability to disrupt both players with one of your players, and the other one being a completely untouched economy. Yo lost barely anything. He lost 2 villagers and killed 19. Most of it is obviously fish. There is a castle coming up. First Crusade for Classic Pro. First Crusade on Team Islands. Let's go, boys. That's a lot of fast fires. Something that Yo has to be careful about. Although the fishing ships are actually useful here, tanking the damage. But Yo's gotta be careful about this. Yo's gotta be real careful. Now they're shelling Winchester's base, but you know that SalzZ doesn't give up easily on water. So now we have the sergeants marching out. First Crusade, man. Still, I mean, those sergeants are kind of underwhelming over here, and with this fleet going down for SalzZ, this should be a game for WWP, although the military numbers are technically favoring SalzZ, but it's mostly just sergeants, and organ guns are actually very, very good at dealing with sergeants as well. So really, it's Licks being able to be very, very disruptive, and also SalzZ struggling to clean up. They knew it was coming, they were prepared for it, yet they still died to that. And that's crazy. When you know it's coming and you still can't stop it is what shows that your opponent is doing something really, really well. Because they knew exactly that landing is coming. You're expecting that from the Teutons. But they were never able to stop it entirely. And, I mean, sergeants versus that many organ guns feels like a very, very bad joke. Licks is also imping, which means that he could actually start getting quite a lot of sling done. Or technically the Teuton Navy with demos could be something to consider. I think we have seen Doubt using Teuton Navy in tuples so far. We have a bit of a lag here. Hello? It's probably the organ guns, like the projectiles flying around is actually making the game lag a little bit. But still, at this point, Light Cav is coming in for a yellow player, but this is just full desperation. Yo and Licks will probably start setting up trade in the foreseeable future, whereas Winchester already lost his base, so Winchester won't be able to replenish his ships, and soon we'll have traps being set up to take down these castles. And I think, look at Licks, he's already getting Cavalier in on the other side. Licks is just the master of landings. We have seen this so many times from him, as we're going to take a look at the slideshow of organ guns shooting with all these lag spikes. It definitely is related to all the gunpowder shooting. So we'll have now two traps being set up here. One of them is actually on a hill, the other one is just even ground compared to the castle. Still, it's just a matter of time, I believe, for Vincent Classic Pro, because they really won't have anywhere to go soon. The Cavalier will be coming in on the other side, and we'll start raiding Classic Pro's eco. And I think, like, these are the two castles that are keeping Vincent Classic Pro alive, if you can actually call it alive. That being said, Yo is down to 8 ships. And that's something to consider. Yo and Licks are down to 8 ships. Obviously now it's more about the land aggression, but if somehow this land aggression stops, which seems somewhat unlikely, Yo with 43 organ guns and 6 bombard cannons against onagers, if this somehow is stopped, WWP could be in trouble. The problem is that I don't see it being stopped, to be honest, and Yo is now going to make a TC on the opponent's island to start chopping his wood. What are you even going to do against that many organ guns, man? And also, as I said, Licks is just waiting for the opportunity to unleash the Cavalier. And he will probably start adding rams as well. Or, honestly, this will be a moment where you actually start adding, maybe even onagers if you're Licks. Make onagers and chop down the opponent's trees, just to make sure that, you know, in a very, very late game, there could be no chance for them. Still, I mean, this game should very much be over. So, indeed, Winchester and Classic Pro called the GG. There were moments in this game where it seemed like SalzZ is going to edge it out, but at the end of the day, Yo and Licks, masters of team islands, with all the aggression from Licks and the ability to boom behind it from Yo, it's just a lethal combination. And Yo and Licks show why this is their home map, and you can see, this is exactly the WWP playstyle. You have one player with weak eco but a lot of aggression, and another player with massive eco, and that is just going to snowball the game. Yo also collected 5 relics, by the way. You have 4 only on your island, which means that he stole at least 1 from the opponent as well. He's at 5 relics, but really this imp time shows how much better eco he has had compared to everyone else in the game. And with that, we will go to the final game of the set, which is going to be Regicide Fortress. Now, that's a tricky map because I believe that like SalzZ had a crazy good build on Regicide Fortress in the qualifiers. Classic Pro's sort of 2TC boom into fast imp with Kumans is extremely tough to beat. On the other hand, they lost to Doubt and Slam with that build. They will be left with Kumans and Byzantines, two very good civilizations for that map. Whereas on the other side, Franks and Burmese, I can see that working, but I actually like Kumans and Byzantines here a little bit better. Game number 5, decider game between SalzZ and WWP. It's an extremely important decider game, because the loser will have to play in the next round, whereas the winner is automatically in the quarterfinals. So this is for the position and the chance to win Group D in 2+2. Mr.Yo and Lix will be on the south in blue and green. We will have Burmese for Lix in green, and Yo will be playing the cavalry player in blue Franks. Classic Pro will be playing Kumans. As I said, it's going to be a 2TC boom, most likely into a fast imp Kipchak play. Something that Doubt and Slam were able to stop, but teams in the qualifiers weren't. So we will see if Yo and Lix are prepared for this one, because that's a very strong build, and early aggression can actually derail it. But if you can't stop Classic Pro's build here or harass him enough, he's just going to snowball the game with like a very fast, something like an 18 or 19 minutes Imperial Age with like 70 villagers. That's an extremely strong build from Classic Pro. Whereas on the other side, we'll have Byzantines for Winchester, which I think is an underrated civ here. They can go Haben Siege, they can go Arblast and Siege. They have very strong castles, which helps establish very good map presence on this map. I think Byzantines is actually a very good civ for this map here. Winchester luring in the board with his scout to save some time on the villagers. And look at that feudal timing from Classic Pro. 2 minutes to 25 seconds, feudal age. Classic Pro's build here, I would dare to say that the reason why he's doing it and not Winchester is because if you think about it, Classic Pro might be doing this better than Winch. I've never seen Winch doing this, but Classic Pro is just doing this build so well. So Classic Pro is going to be by far the first player to feudal age here, and as I said, it's going to be a 2TC boom basically into a fast Imperial Age with potentially like 2 castle Kipchak, and then the idea is that you get like 20 Kipchak out on the field, and then you drop a castle on the front and you will get trebs. The main advantage of the imp here will be trebs to start shelling the opponent's castles. Winchester, on the other hand, I wonder what he's up to. With Byzantines, you could think about a fast imp, but that's a big gamble. I think it's safer just to go for a free TC play here and then go for like a Hob and Siege approach. Or so. Down south, Lix is most likely going to be on a run-by play from him. Indeed, he's actually sending villagers to stone, which means that he will probably be playing double castle run-by here. And Yo will probably be just booming away here, I believe. Goes to feudal with a 20 pop, but that should be more than enough for a castle age for him. So second TC coming in here for Classic Pro on wood, on stone, or the establishing farms. Like, when I actually looked at the qualifiers, I was shocked by how good this build is for Classic Pro. 0 seconds TC idle time, crystal clean 2TC boom in feudal. This is an extremely tough build to stop, and I think that future opponents of SalzZ definitely have to consider either banning Regicide Fortress or banning Kumans, because SalzZ is just so good at using this civ on this map, and that's going to be a massive eco lead for SalzZ. Feudal Age coming in last for Winchester. Seems like he's only going to play a fast castle as well. Not going to be any fast imp or comparable shenanigans here. So the real question is where is Lix going to drop that second castle? Because you can actually drop the second castle potentially in the face of Classic Pro, and that could cause massive chaos overall. So that would be something to consider. Other than that, if he doesn't play very aggressive against Classic Pro is going to have a massive upper hand in this one. So we will have Castle Age coming in here for Mr.Yo first. That's a very, very nice and clean fast castle for him. Fast castle coming in here for a Winchester as well. So that is going to be a pretty clean FC as well. Indeed, this version of Regicide Fortress doesn't have towers, which actually is, you know, sort of there to motivate players to play a little bit more aggressively, allows a little bit bigger chance, I would say, for like a unique unit plus siege push in early castle or so. Double TC play for Classic Pro. Coming in here, he's at 31 villagers, and that is steadily increasing. So we will have Castle Age for everybody but Classic Pro. But as I said, I think Classic Pro is just going to play the fast game build for him. This is the weakest part, I believe, of the build for SalzZ. That Lix will be able to apply some pressure with the Arambai, and he will have the ability to drop a second castle as well. The question is, even if you castle drop Classic Pro, where do you even drop that castle so that you can actually disrupt his eco? Because you kind of have to drop it somewhere around like here to have any chance at influencing that. So, Castle Age coming in here for Winchester. We're gonna have 2 TCs being added by Mr.Yo. So it is a free TC boom now, Boso coming in as well for him. He obviously has heavy blow because of the Franks, which is a nice bonus overall. Lix reaching Castle Age in a matter of moments. And really, the main question right now is where exactly that castle is going up. He will buy 100 extra stone, but that to me means that he wants to drop a forward castle. The question is, who is he going to castle drop? I think he has to castle drop his, he has to castle drop Classic Pro here. That's the only chance. If he just castle drops Winchester, I don't think that's going to do much of a damage. Winch will be doing double TC addition as well, and I'm not really a fan of this one for Lix. I mean, the thing is that Lix will have double castle run by, sure, but what are you even going to do against stone walls? Especially when Classic Pro reaches Castle Age, his stone walls are also going to be stronger. That's the only chance that I see for Lix. That right now those stone walls are fairly weak. It's only 900 HP in Fuel Age, and they get to 1800 in Castle. Obviously, Byzantine stone walls are even stronger, but unless it is sort of like a petard run-by play, I don't necessarily see that happening for Lix here. Classic Pro should click up into Castle Age very soon, but I like the way that Classic Pro is adding a second layer to the wall. That's exactly what he has to do, because one way to prevent petards from just blasting through your walls and allowing the run-by to run in is to just add a second layer of walls. Now, the petards are also quite slow moving, so that's going to take quite a lot of time for Lix to get there, and honestly, Lix is going double castle run-by, but he still hasn't done any damage, and I'm starting to feel that his pressure is going to be too slow here, because you see that Classic Pro is walling up. He doesn't need to wall up everything, he just needs to make sure he's walled until that castle, and when Castle Age kicks in, he's gonna have stronger walls as well. And more importantly, it seems like Lix is actually focusing on Winchester on the left side, and that is actually troublesome for the Chinese team, because believe it or not, Winchester's walls will hold longer, and I think the key player right now is Classic Pro. With Castle Age just now coming in, it looks like he's not gonna go early into Imperial, though in this case, instead he's heavy on stone, and this is just gonna be like a 2 TC boom into Castle Age, and probably double castle Kipchak play. Still, here comes the petards. Winchester is ready, he's getting monks out on the field, he has TCs protecting his key resource, and the castle protects the gold mine, and Winchester sees that. Winchester sees the petards, he knows exactly that it is coming, and 2 petards will be enough to blast through even Byzantine walls over here. That might be the reason why Classic Pro also clicked up, because he wants to mix in a couple of Kipchak to help his teammate. Still, eco is massively in the favor of SalzZ, but as I said, this is the scariest part of the game for Winch and Classic Pro. There is one conversion for Winch, and he also jumps back into the TC with the Monk. Very, very nicely done for him. Forward Siege Workshop by Lix inside the opponent's base, but guess what? Byzantines actually have very, very good monks, and Byzantine buildings also last longer, so honestly, pushing Byzantines here is extremely hard for Lix. And remember that while Yo is on free TC boom, actually, look at this. Yo's free TC boom is completely even to the 2 TC boom of Classic Pro, so this wasn't that great from Classic Pro at the end of the day. I feel like this build, in order to be very successful, kind of needs that early Imperial element. Otherwise, just free TC, fast castle seems to be yielding the same villager count, and there is going to be a 4 TC being added by Mr.Yo as well. Second castle out, and there will be Kipchak incoming. Keep in mind that the overall eco will be still better for Salts. Monks now coming in to get conversions. There is quite a lot of conversions coming in free. I think it's 3 or 4 conversions here. And that is big for Vinch. I feel like one thing to consider is that Winchester is a very, very good player when it comes to defending against these unique unit pushes. Comes from his arena background, and now the Kipchak will dive in. Kipchak will try to focus down the ram, and this is looking pretty decent, I would say, for Salts, because if you think about it, Winchester is on free TC, so he's at 53 villagers, whereas Lix is only at 35, while the boom of Yo is actually comparable to the boom of Classic Pro. Still, snowballing the game with heavy cavalry could still be something that the Franks can think about, although if it's only heavy cavalry, then I can see Halberdier play from Winchester here. Still, Lix is not going to give up on this, but I think Winch has a pretty consistent boom here. 57 villagers for him right now. Lix is only at 36. Lix is once again going for a very, very all-in like strategy, but you see that this is working way worse than it worked on islands, and the Redemption Monks actually convert rams. What was that conversion? That was an instant conversion on the ram, and Lix is forced to delete the Siege Workshop to prevent it from being converted. Winchester is very, very good with that defense on the monks. And that was an insta-convert on the ram, and now Winchester is like, okay, I have 4 monks, I have rams, and Winchester is also tagging into champion, interestingly. Castle drop coming in here from Classic Pro, because Yo was just booming, and that means that the Classic Pro can drop a castle, and one thing to consider is that Classic Pro is gonna have a better imp time. Why? Because Mr.Yo is spending so much food on making a 4 TC boom happen. Yo is actually clicking up to Imperial a little faster than Classic Pro, it seems. Like, Classic Pro was supposed to have the advantage into Imperial, but that's not really the case. A knight pops out here for Mr.Yo. Classic Pro, once again, could actually get a doubt castle in his face, but the numbers are much better for Classic Pro, and even though the Frankish cavalry flood is always dangerous, you shouldn't underestimate the fact that you're up against 20 Kipchak with a castle in your face, and traps will soon come out, I believe, for Classic Pro once he reaches Imperial. And more importantly, Winchester is also clicking into Imp, and that's the time where I think either Winch needs to make barracks here and go for Halberdier to try and fight the army from Yo, or the alternative is that he's gonna go Arbalest and try to finish off Lix. I think if you're Salts right now, you gotta focus on finishing off Mr.Yo. We're gonna have a castle coming up here for Winchester, something that Lix does not see, and with an earlier Imperial Age, you will be able to start trapping down that castle, crippling the production of Lix, which is also super important here. Being able to stop the production of Lix will mean that he's gonna be left without his best unit that's available for Burmese. So that is going to be very scary. Look at this. Outposts being dropped all over the place by Classic Pro to see the movement of his opponent, make sure that he can limit it as much as possible. We have a converted Kipchak by Yo here, immediately losing his life. And it looks like we'll have Halberdier for Winch. He knows exactly that Halberdier and traps here could potentially be enough to take down the castles, and if there is no Rambai, nothing stops the Halberdier. I mean, Franks can go for Throwing Axeman, but it's only 1 castle for Yo, and Throwing Axeman still doesn't beat Kipchak. That's a scary blob of a Rambai, though, something that you have to be careful about. But Yo is going to realize just now that there's a castle in the face of his teammate, and Lix is nowhere close to Imperial. 149 villagers and 145, but it's a lot more even distribution in Salts. Basically even villager count for 2 players, whereas in WWP you got Yo with a crazy boom, but Lix not having a lot overall. And I feel like the problem for Yo and Lix will be just the actual unit composition. They will have heavy cavalry, but you see that Vinch is already getting infantry out, and if you just go Halberdier here, especially now that Thumbring is coming in for Classic Pros, Kipchak, and they're just carrying all those around by back, Treb immediately coming in for Winchester, as he misclicked it to a Catapract. We will even see Theocracy and block printing for Vinch, so he is still counting on those monks. Treb's already out for Mr.Yo, but Classic Pro has the castle on the hill, so he can actually fire down hills here with his own Trebs. Obviously, that castle is very, very important, but we will have a raid coming in here from Classic Pro, could hit quite a lot of villagers from Yo, and Yo is gonna have gold control issues because one of his golds is castle dropped, and this gold man on the left side is gonna get raided. Ram knocking down the siege workshop. Winchester needs to set up that trap to start taking down that castle though, because the more time you give Lix, the more Rambai he will have, and that's a scary blob of a Rambai, man. 23 Rambai is no joke. Here come the Cavalier, as Yo will try to save his own traps here. Halberdiers are out for Vinch, but the upgrades aren't impressive, and the numbers aren't even impressive either. Big fight in the middle though. Kipchak's not really willing to take that fight for the time being. Trebs are out though, and it looks like Yo might be sending the heavy cavalry to the left. He clicks Paladin, and remember that Byzantine Halberdiers do not have the Blast Furnace upgrade either, so Frankish Paladin will eat Byzantine Halberdiers, as Classic Pro will lose this castle, but I feel like this is once again, Yo has to make it happen in a 1 versus 2. And I feel like the problem here is going to be unit composition. Rambarai coming in. Army numbers are not that bad for WWP, but once there is enough Halberdiers on the field for Vinch, I feel like this game goes nowhere for the cold color team here. So Rambai doing a nice job picking off those Halberdiers, but they're also being forced back, and they are separated from the Cavalier, and Kipchak actually deal quite a decent damage to Cavalier here. Paladin almost in for Yo, but his numbers aren't impressive, and more importantly, if Lix loses the castles, he won't replenish the Rambai. So suddenly they will be missing a component from their army. Heresy coming in here for Mr.Yo, as we will have the first castle going down in a moment from Lix, and that will allow Winchester to push into Lix's base here, and I have to say that this is going to be an absolutely insane set regardless of the result, and it goes to show how close these teams are in terms of skill when it comes to a diverse map pool. I think SalzZ actually exceeded expectations regardless of the result, but the biggest problem that Lix is facing is that he's not going to be able to replenish his Rambai. That being said, that's a lot of Frankish Paladin, and we have seen Frankish Paladin snowballing games, so don't give up on this just yet if you're WWP, because one thing that's missing is Halberdier numbers for Vinch. And I would think that if you're Classic Pro, you could also think about adding Halberdiers yourself here. But on the other hand, this is the problem for Lix, as I said. Once you take down those castles, suddenly there is going to be no Rambai for Lix. If there is no Rambai, Halberdier will just eat the Paladin. So nice micro over there. Kipchaks aren't dealing that much damage to fully upgraded Paladins, but they can hit and run, so they can make it a fairly cost-efficient one. And more importantly, right now, Yo has no answer to Halberdiers, and even though those hubs aren't great, they will still be much more cost-efficient, especially with the cheaper Byzantine Halberdiers than the Paladins are. And if this castle goes down from Lix, I feel like the chances of Yo and Lix turning this around is very, very small, because they will just have no answer to Halberdiers. You can jump into the castle with that Classic Pro if you want, but apparently he is not willing to. That's still quite a lot of Rambai on the field, but nice unit control there for SalzZ. Yo still has an insane amount of Paladin, but as I said, eventually he's going to run out of gold. Like, that's what's gonna happen at some time. And the king is out here for Lix. Remember, if you destroy the castle, the king evacuates, and the king is out in the open there for Lix. We'll have to keep a check on that, as right now Classic Pro is trying to snipe traps to keep that castle alive. That's an important castle because he needs Kipchak production. More Halberdiers coming in, but the numbers aren't great for Vinch. Vinch is missing numbers really badly here for that front line, although he's annihilating Lix. It looks like Lix's king will go towards Mr.Yo. This is an interesting one, because the thing is that I think that Winchester should put a lot more focus on helping out this side with Halberdiers, because it's a good thing that he's destroying Lix, but they should have learned from game number 1. Game number 1, Lix was destroyed, Yo 1v2 is this one. But guess what? humans also have paladins, and I think Winchester, considering that he's not spending an awful lot of resources making cheap halberdiers, he could sling classic pro resources for paladin. WWP takes over a military count, it's still 40 paladin on the field versus 40 halberdier, but only 10 Kipchak. I seriously think that Classic Pro and Vinch are misplaying this one by pushing Lix further. Lix is dead, man. Just leave Lix be, he can't replenish his army. He's losing everything, sure, but now you're sacrificing your yellow player for this one, and if Winchester actually helped here, this would have been a much easier fight for SalzZ, and if this is a win for WWP, it's a massive throw for SalzZ, because look at this. Classic Pro is down to 68 villagers, all the dead bodies here, all because Winchester didn't send his halberdiers to this side. That's actually just lack of communication, lack of synergy, whatever you want to call it. That's a massive misplay from SalzZ, something that could lose them the game, and if it was the first time that they lose a game like this, I would say, okay, they weren't prepared for Yo 1v2 in this, but this is copy-paste the Arabia game. Copy-paste. They are still, they're still killing Lix when Lix is 16 villagers instead of having any focus on Yo. And now that the Kipchaks are dead, Yo can just go throwing axemen against the halberdiers. I feel like this would be a massively deserved win for Yo and Lix for being able to exploit such mistakes from SalzZ, because now Yo is at 42 paladin. Lix is almost defeated, but once again, it's just the same old thing. Lix absorbing the damage and Yo snowballing the game, and SalzZ apparently not learning from their previous mistakes. Down to 60 villagers is Classic Pro. They still should have the advantage here, but how do you stop 42 paladin here? Because it's 30 halberdiers, but there is still 29 Arambai on the field that can take them down, as WWP is establishing trade, and I just don't feel the momentum from SalzZ now. Like, they feel lost. They feel like they don't really know what to do in this situation. Winchester is still in a very decent position, but they have no trade, and as long as the Arambai are there, the halberdiers will just melt to them. And more importantly, since there is no more units, Classic Pro almost made a lethal mistake. This is one of the reasons why you don't garrison your king inside a castle if you make a unique unit. He accidentally ungarrisoned the king alongside the units that he was making. This is something that could have lost him the game. He had that king out in the open for a moment. Now the Arambai are slowly getting pushed back by the halberdiers, but look at the momentum from Yo. And yeah, Lix is dead. That's totally true. But how alive is Classic Pro now? He's losing everything. By the way, he lost the king. He lost the king! That's the king lying dead! That's the king lying dead! And with that, SalzZ loses the game! What a shock, man! And Yo, I have to say that, like, whatever happens, Yo is a big MVP here. Because what Yo did was absolutely hilarious. He actually won 2 games by himself, basically. And look at this. The king... Oh, wait, let's rewind this a little bit more. Oh no. Here's the king. When does it ungarrison? When does it ungarrison? Because he might just press the ungarrison button with the villagers. He actually ungarrisons the king because he feels like this TC is gonna get pushed. Then the king kind of loses track of what he's actually doing. Yo jumps on it immediately, and one of the differences between this Regicide Fortress and standard Regicide Fortress is that on standard you can garrison into towers, and Winchester completely forgetting about its king, and since this is Regicide, losing the king means losing the game, and a very well deserved win for WWP. SalzZ had it in their grasp, but they let it slip away. Like, this is... They had it... I think they had it in the Arabia game, but they weren't able to finish off the game. Yo 1v2 that one. Same thing here, and an epic set, and which means that SalzZ was just inches away from winning their group, but WWP ends up winning the group, and with that, SalzZ will be pushed back into the decider game. Very well done by Mr.Yo. Mr.Yo played like an 11 out of 10 game. not just in here, but the Arabia game, the Islands game. And with that, WWP gets into the quarterfinals, and SalzZ will have to take a decider set against Dalton Slam for what is going to be a rematch, by the way. We had a crazy set between Dalton Slam and SalzZ in the previous round. SalzZ won 3-2. And now they lose 3-2, so there will be a rematch of that. And WWP won't have to play in the decider games, and they will go into the quarterfinals. What a game, man. Just what a game. Like, Licks, look at this timeline. Licks was nowhere in this game, but then just Yo happened. Yo with 2.59 KD. Look at that eco, 56,000. Man, Yo was just playing out of his mind. Especially this last game. This was something special from Yo because he really didn't receive a lot of help from Licks. Licks had the run by, but... And at the end of the day, I believe that... in retrospective, was it a good idea to destroy Licks like this? No. I think they should have... they should have focused a lot more on the right side, pushing Yo. Because Licks was already dead when Winchester started pushing this TC, for example, and they underestimated the chance of Yo coming back with 4 Paladin, and he did it.